One moment, I was riding my Kawasaki H2 on the highway, doing a live stream for my fans, and the next, everything went black. When I woke up, I was standing in a vast wilderness full of tall trees and thick bushes. No road, no bike, no nothing. A strange glowing screen appeared in front of me after I touched my temple. It said I was now a survivor in a place called the birthplace. Apparently, 5 billion people between ages 18 and 50 had been transported here. Everyone else back home was sealed away, and if I died, my sealed relatives would die too. Since I grew up as an orphan, I wasn't sure what that meant for me, but the rules still sent a chill down my spine. The rules were simple but scary. I had 3 days of basic protection where dangerous creatures were less likely to notice me. During the day, I could explore and gather supplies. At night, I had to hide in a shelter, or something terrible would happen. Gray fog would roll in every night, and if it ever turned black, I needed to fight for my life. After the 3-day protection ended, some kind of natural disaster would be announced. I checked my personal panel. Level, ordinary, age 26, height 183 centimeters. There was a regional chat channel with 10,000 people, and everyone was panicking, bragging, or crying for help. Some guy claimed to be the richest man alive and demanded to go back. Others were asking the same question I had. Where's the shelter? I opened my inventory and found a starter pack, 3 portions of dry rations, 3 bottles of spring water, a stone axe, and a stone pickaxe. All basic quality. Food and tools, fine, but still no shelter. Then a cold voice echoed in everyone's mind. Every survivor would now draw their own shelter from a lottery wheel. There were ordinary ones like straw huts and special ones like caves, underground dens, and treehouses. The special shelters had absurdly low odds. The best was only 0.001%. I stared at those tiny slivers on the wheel and grinned. My luck had never been great, but I figured I'd gamble it all anyway. I tapped the button. The wheel started spinning, rainbow lights swirling, and I watched the needle turn with my heart pounding in my chest. The wheel spun for about 30 seconds, then started slowing down. The needle crept along the edge of the straw hut section, and I was staring so hard my face turned red. I kept whispering, "Move, move, move." And then, like some miracle, the needle jumped one last time and landed on the cave shelter. I barely had time to celebrate before a new announcement hit me like cold water. Because I drew a special shelter, I triggered a special event called Escape. Apparently some creature called a mountain rock bristleback now hated me for taking its cave, and I had to survive its chase for 1 full hour. I had 15 seconds to prepare. I didn't waste a single moment. I sprinted into the forest, cursing the whole way. In about 10 seconds, I covered 70 or 80 meters. I knew I couldn't fight this thing head-on, so my only option was to climb. I picked the tallest, thickest tree I could find and scrambled up. I even lost a shoe but couldn't stop to grab it. The countdown started. I climbed to about 5 or 6 meters, sat on a branch, locked my legs around it, and pulled out my stone axe. Then I waited. The forest was dead silent. After a moment, the bristleback appeared, a wild boar the size of a water buffalo, eyes glowing red, covered in bristles that looked like steel spikes. It locked onto me instantly, pawed the ground, and charged the tree like a small pickup truck. The impact shook the whole tree so hard I nearly lost my grip. But what I didn't know was that there was something even worse above me. A massive python coiled on a branch less than 2 meters over my head, already opening its jaws to swallow me. The boar's crash shook the snake too, interrupting its attack. Furious at the disruption, the python slithered down past me. I felt its thick body slide across my hand and turned to see it heading straight for the boar. My mind went blank with terror. Down below, the boar was dizzy from the collision, but still burning with hatred for me. It got ready to charge again. The python dropped from the tree and hissed a warning, but the boar didn't care. It charged once more. This time, after dodging the impact, the python struck. It launched itself at the stunned boar and coiled its massive body around it, squeezing tight. That was my chance. I climbed down as fast as I could and ducked into the bushes, heading back toward where I'd first appeared. I even snatched my lost shoe off the ground on the way. But halfway there I stopped. The python had been less than 100 meters from my starting point. Once it finished killing the boar, it might come after me next. And nowhere else was guaranteed to be safe either. I clenched my jaw and made a decision. I turned back, crouched in the undergrowth near the tree with the stone pickaxe in one hand and the stone axe in the other. I watched the two beasts tear into each other and waited for my moment. The moment when they'd worn each other down enough for me to deliver the final blow. My hands were shaking, but my mind was calm. It felt just like riding my motorcycle at full speed, staying cool in the middle of madness, searching for a way to survive right on the edge of death. The boar went crazy trying to shake off the python, thrashing and jumping around, but the snake only squeezed tighter. I opened my survival interface and noticed the identify function, so I used it on both creatures. They were both rated advanced level. The boar had rock-hard bristles and crushing tusks, and the python could strangle things much bigger than itself. I swallowed hard. These were way above my pay grade. But watching them fight, I noticed something. The boar kept flailing around stupidly, unable to shake the snake off. It was strong but dumb. That gave me an idea. I put away my tools, walked out into the open about 15 meters from them, and waved my arms. The boar spotted me immediately. The hatred kicked in, and it charged straight at me with the python still wrapped around it. I waited until it was just a few meters away, then dove to the side. The boar couldn't stop in time and slammed full speed into a thick tree. The trunk snapped like a stick. The python took the full force of the impact plus got cut up by the jagged wood. The boar took damage too, mostly from the python crushing its insides. It actually worked, so I kept doing it. I threw rocks at the boar, taunted it, dodged its charges, and let it crash into tree after tree. The python refused to let go no matter how badly it got hurt. Pure hunting instinct. By the time the 1-hour countdown finished, a dozen trees lay broken around us. The boar was on the ground, soaked in blood, barely able to breathe. The python had been torn in half, one piece still hanging on the boar, the other pinned under a fallen tree. I walked up to the boar. It looked at me with fading red eyes. I raised the stone axe and pickaxe together and brought them down on its damaged skull. Then I finished off the python the same way. The moment they died, 3 booming announcements echoed across the entire world. I was the first survivor to kill an advanced-level beast, and I'd earned a special reward from the birthplace. Every single survivor heard it. The chat channel exploded. People were shocked, jealous, curious, calling me a god, or asking for tips. I ignored all of it. I was too busy staring at the loot. I used the collect function on both corpses, and they dissolved into balls of light that flew into my inventory. From the boar I got hide, a beast heart, 2 tusks, a spine, and 120 portions of meat. From the python I got 40 portions of meat, a heart, 2 fangs, and a spine, plus 2 resource cards and 1 item card. I tried collecting the fallen trees too, but nothing happened. Apparently, I could only harvest things I'd personally chopped down. Branches could be picked up, but wouldn't turn into proper lumber no matter how many I gathered. No shortcuts allowed. With nothing left to scavenge, I headed back to my starting rock to sort through everything I'd earned. First thing I did was look for my shelter, and after searching everywhere, I finally found it sitting in my inventory. A crystal monument that could generate a special cave shelter. It said the cave started at level 1 with high defense and would randomly produce special materials inside. Just seeing it made me breathe easier. Without a shelter, I didn't want to think about what nightfall would bring. I sorted through my loot. Besides the meat and beast parts, I had 3 cards. 2 were resource cards, and 1 was an item card. All good quality with glowing patterns on them. I used them right away. The resource cards gave me 3 dew fruits that could fill my stomach and reduce tiredness, plus a set of lightweight clothes in some strange style I'd never seen on Earth. The item card gave me a speed talisman, 20% faster movement for 5 minutes. After what I'd just been through, I knew that thing could save my life. Then I opened the special reward box from the server-wide announcement. Inside were 2 items, a spirit crystal and something called the Spirit Awakening book, though it was only a fragment. The crystal contained some kind of primal energy from this world, but the book was the real prize. It was more like a thin, illustrated album than a book, ancient-looking and glowing with a sacred feeling. When I opened the first page, a holographic figure appeared, a warrior in ornate armor covered in runes, face hidden behind a full helmet, with glowing white eyes. It was called a Spirit Guardian, rated advanced level, a summoned fighter that felt no pain and never tired. If I'd had one of those during the boar fight, I wouldn't have nearly died. The creation recipe needed a main module for submodules and 2 special modules. I slotted the spirit crystal as the main module. For the submodules, I used beast hearts, hide, tusks, and spine bones from my kills. That worked. But duplicate parts from different beasts didn't stack, so I had to pick one set of tusks, not both. The 2 special module slots stayed empty. I'd have to find those somewhere before I could actually create the Guardian. I tried placing my shelter crystal at my spawn point, but it told me the conditions weren't met. So I picked a direction where the trees looked thinner and started walking. About an hour after I left, something showed up near my old spot. A terrifying lizard-like creature with blood-red scales, cold slit pupils, and claws that carved holes in the ground with every step. It sniffed around the big rock where I'd been standing, lingered for a while, then left. I never knew how close I came. As I moved through the forest, I kept spotting dangerous creatures. A dog-sized mole with claws dozens of centimeters long was digging up fist-sized ants and eating them. Advanced level, just like the boar and the python. That was the 3rd one I'd seen. This place was crawling with powerful beasts. I crouched in the bushes and started to sneak around it. Then I heard a faint sound. I dropped flat on the ground and watched. The mole heard it too and froze. After a long silence, the mole went back to digging, and I thought maybe I'd imagined it. But the moment I started to move, a black shadow shot out from the side. A flash of dark light, and the mole was gone, snatched away instantly. Only its severed head remained on the ground. I didn't even see what did it. Whatever that thing was, it was on a completely different level. I got out of there as fast as I could. After nearly 7 hours of constant tension, I was exhausted, but I couldn't afford to rest. Night was only a few hours away. I kept pushing forward, and after walking about 3 kilometers, I finally found a spot that looked right for building my shelter. I found a clearing in front of a small cliff face, maybe a few dozen meters tall, made of dirt and hard rock with trees growing on top. It looked like a chunk of ground had been pushed upward. I pulled out the shelter crystal and used it. The system confirmed the location worked. A flash of white light hit the cliff wall, and when it faded, a wooden door stood there. My cave shelter was built. The door was rough. Gray-brown planks with small gaps between them, and a 3-finger-wide space at the bottom where a rat could easily squeeze through. Behind the door was a wooden bar I could use to lock it from inside. The cave itself was dark and had a small stone fire pit on the right side with a few bits of charcoal burning. I tossed in some branches to get a proper flame going. Once I could actually see, I looked around and my jaw dropped. The place was about 6 by 4 meters, 20 square meters of bare rock walls. No bed, no storage, nothing. Just the fire pit and a hexagonal crystal monument embedded in the center wall. That was it. I nearly lost my life fighting that giant boar for this. I was furious. I ate a dew fruit to calm down, but the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I grabbed my stone axe and stormed outside to chop trees. After an hour and a half, I was completely drained, but had gathered 11 units of lumber. Each tree took about 30 minutes to fell and gave around 5 units of wood. The stone axe was slow and had limited durability, maybe 10 trees before it broke. I figured a full day of hard work would yield 40 to 60 units at best. With the sky getting dark, I rushed to plug the gap under the door with a wooden plank and some rocks. The smaller cracks I couldn't fix. That would have to wait for an upgrade. Looking at that flimsy door gave me a bad feeling in my gut. I sat by the fire and opened the chat channel. People were trading tips about chopping wood. One guy bragged about getting 60 or 70 units in a day. Then someone said they were lost and couldn't find their way back. Others told them to climb a tree and hide. Before that conversation even finished, the lost person started screaming. The fog had appeared. Then it turned black. They were begging for help, and then their name went gray. Dead. That's when I noticed the population counter in the corner. It had been 10,000 this morning. Now it read 9,842, and it kept ticking down. Every few seconds, another person's last words would flash across the chat before their icon went dark. I checked the time, barely past 6 in the evening, but through the cracks in my door, I could see it was pitch black outside already. I couldn't waste another minute. I needed to upgrade this shelter now. I pulled out some of the python meat, 40 kilograms total, each unit being 1 kilo. Seemed like a poor yield from such a massive snake, but I figured the system just skimmed most of it. My plan was to trade some of the meat on the market for building materials. I opened the trading market. Since it was day one, most listings were just wood and stone, with a few overpriced tools and items scattered around. I ignored the junk and searched for the highest volume trades instead. The trading market was nearly empty. Most people had barely chopped enough wood for themselves on day one, and with dry rations still available, nobody felt the need to trade. Stone was rarer than wood. The exchange rate was about 1 stone to 2 or 3 wood, since mining took more effort and good stones were hard to find. I'd walked 3 kilometers through the forest and barely seen any. I decided to sell 20 units of python meat, split into 2 batches, one priced at 30 wood per unit, the other at 15 stone per unit. It felt like selling at a loss for good, quality meat, but staying safe mattered more than getting a perfect deal. I posted a message in the chat channel advertising my sale. The moment I hit send, the chat slowed down as everyone rushed to the market. Both batches vanished almost instantly. People were complaining they couldn't even click fast enough. One guy revealed he'd found something called a crystal box, a fancy treasure chest from the birthplace, and got a copper axe from it that made chopping way faster. That's how he had enough wood to buy my meat. Others were shocked, some were begging for more food, and a few recognized my name from the server announcement. My profile picture showed my face and motorcycle jacket, which apparently caught some attention. Friend requests started flooding in from female survivors. I muted all of it. No time for that. I now had 300 units of wood and 150 units of stone. I checked my shelter info right away. The cave was level 1 with decent defense, and it produced 3 copper forging stones per day as a bonus. To upgrade, I needed 150 wood, 50 stone, and optionally 5 good, quality special materials for extra defense. I didn't have any special materials, so I'd have to upgrade without them. Just as I was about to start the upgrade, a strange feeling crept over me, like something was watching. I spun toward the door. It was still shut, the gap at the bottom still blocked. But through the tiny cracks between the planks, something felt wrong. I stared at each crack. Most showed nothing but darkness. But one was different. A small pale sphere sat in the gap, completely white except for a tiny black dot in the center. It wasn't pointed directly at me, but it felt exactly like an eye peering through the crack. My skin crawled. I grabbed my stone axe and locked my gaze on that thing. It didn't move. Minutes passed, and it stayed perfectly still, like a dead object. But the longer I watched, the worse it got. A cold, eerie presence began seeping into the cave, and a wave of sadness and despair washed over me out of nowhere. My arms and legs started going numb, like I was being paralyzed. I could barely move my fingers toward the upgrade screen. I forced myself to shout through gritted teeth, pushing back the dark emotions flooding my mind. And the moment I made a sound, that white sphere finally moved. That white sphere suddenly spun and locked directly onto my eyes. The instant we made eye contact, a massive wave of hatred and dark emotions slammed into me. Cold sweat poured down my forehead. My lips trembled from the effort of trying to move. The fire crackled beside me, but I couldn't feel its warmth at all. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't reach the upgrade button. Then the crystal monument on the wall behind me erupted with white light. Ripples of pure, glowing energy pulsed outward through the cave and beyond the door. The evil presence was swept away instantly, replaced by something warm and sacred. The pale sphere was forced off the door crack, and a sharp, inhuman shriek pierced the air from outside. I could move again. I was gasping like I'd just sprinted a marathon. I immediately loaded the materials into the upgrade slots, but didn't press the button yet. I had no idea what would happen during the upgrade. Would the protective ripples stop? Would I be exposed? Would that thing come back and paralyze me again? The white ripples kept pulsing for about 3 minutes. I could hear something outside. Footsteps mixed with scraping sounds, like a creature pacing near the door, but too afraid to touch it. Then the ripples faded and the monument went quiet, its glow even dimmer than before. But the creepy feeling was gone too. Whatever that thing was, it had left. I slammed the upgrade button. White light swallowed the entire cave for a few breaths, and when it cleared, everything had changed. The walls were smoother and more even, for thick wooden support pillars stood in the corners. The fire pit was bigger, but the best part was the door, no more gaps. The planks fit together tightly. The bottom was sealed with a stone threshold. The door was wider and about 5 centimeters thick instead of the pathetic 2 centimeters before. The wooden bar lock was heavier and sturdier. It finally felt like a real door. I realized I'd been wrong to complain about the cave. After what just happened, a cave with only one entrance to defend was far better than any straw hut. I skewered some boar meat on a branch and started roasting it over the fire while checking the chat. It was around 8 at night, and people were sharing horror stories. One person's fire had gone out, and they could feel something outside. Another had reported knocking on their door. Their icon was already gray. Dead. Then a man named Huang Jiping shared his experience. Some creature had been scratching at his wooden door, pushing a long, thin tongue through the holes in the wood, trying to hook the door bar off. It wasn't even trying to hide. It did it right in front of him. And it actually succeeded in removing the bar. The only reason it couldn't get in was because Huang had spent an hour dragging a heavy rock inside earlier that day and braced it against the door. The creature clawed at the door until the monument's white light activated and drove it away. He said he caught a glimpse of it in the flash of light. A hunched thing walking on 2 legs, covered head to toe in long, dense black fur. It had a pointed snout, a stooped posture like an old woman, and eyes that glowed red. The chat went silent for a moment after that. Then Huang added that he'd wet his pants and asked if anyone could spare him a fresh pair. The chat exploded into panic after Huang Jiping's story. Some people hadn't encountered anything and doubted him. Others figured the guy who reported knocking on his door must have opened it himself, which meant the crystal monument couldn't protect you if you did something stupid. People were realizing there were probably several different kinds of monsters out there in the dark. I looked at the population counter. Hundreds were already gone, and it was only the first night. I narrowed my eyes. I needed to build that spirit guardian as soon as possible. I listed 10 more units of beast meat on the market, this time asking only for special materials in exchange. With over 9,000 people in the region, someone might have found something useful. The roasted boar meat finished cooking. I bit into it. No seasoning, obviously, but the texture was decent enough. Sitting by the dim fire, chewing quietly, I finally let myself relax a tiny bit. My mind drifted to the past. My parents died in a car accident when I was little, and my aunt's family took me in. They treated me well, like their own kid. I had a decent childhood, all things considered. I wondered how my best friend Chu Sheng was doing. We'd been neighbors since I was adopted, grew up together. No way to find out now. After finishing the meat, I looked around the bare cave and realized I couldn't just sleep on dirt. I checked the crafting menu and found tools like stone axes and pickaxes, but no furniture. So I searched the trading market and found someone selling a blueprint for a basic long wooden table, 20 units of wood. I bought it without haggling, used 10 more wood to build it, and placed it in the cave to hold my beast materials and free up inventory space. I changed out of my motorcycle jacket into the lightweight clothes, laid wooden planks on the ground in a corner, spread the huge boar hide over them as a makeshift bed, and collapsed. Sleep came fast. Meanwhile, somewhere far away on a small island surrounded by fog and ocean, there was apparently another survivor with a very different situation. A massive glowing willow tree stood at the center of the island, its branches shimmering green like fireflies, pushing back the fog in a 5-meter radius. A treehouse sat among its branches about 3 meters up. Inside was a tall, powerfully built man named Yi Jun, a real elite soldier, captain of the nation's top special forces unit. He'd been mid-mission, taking down a criminal, when he got transported here. All his gear was stripped except his combat uniform. He'd drawn a treehouse shelter and triggered a kill event against a giant sloth that stood as tall as a man, with razor-sharp claws. Being a top-tier soldier, he managed to fight it barehanded using the willow tree for cover, though he took serious injuries. A healing item from a dropped card saved his life. Now he was sitting in his treehouse, bandaged and scratched up, trying to contact other military personnel in the region, but he'd only found a handful so far. Back on his island, Yi Jun was using coded military language in the chat to find other government personnel. He'd located 3 so far from different departments, and they agreed to help each other. That night, he looked out through his treehouse window and saw the fog thickening over the sea. One patch turned from gray to pure black, and within it he spotted a pair of crimson eyes staring at him before vanishing. Something was lurking out there in the water, radiating pure malice, but it never came ashore. It drifted away with a faint, eerie laugh. The next morning I woke up sore all over from yesterday's effort. I checked the market first. My meat listing was still up, untouched. Plenty of people had sent trade requests, but almost all of them were offering basic materials. After scrolling through dozens, one finally caught my eye. A woman named Huang Wenwen offering 1 copper forging stone for 1 unit of beast meat. I added her as a friend and asked how many stones she had. She tried to set the price at 2 stones for 1 meat, claiming the stones were hard to mine. I knew better. Nobody else needed copper forging stones right now. Meat was the real necessity. I pushed back. 5 stones per meat. She countered at 3. I said 4, take it or leave it. After a long silence, she sent the trade request at my price. For copper forging stones for 1 unit of high-grade meat. Done. My shelter monument had also produced 3 of the same stones overnight, so now I had 7 total. I opened the Spirit Awakening book and confirmed the copper forging stones worked as special material. Just one more type of special material, and I could create my spirit guardian. I pushed open my upgraded door and stepped outside carefully. The sky was overcast, the forest quiet except for occasional rustling in the grass. I picked a direction where the trees grew thick and dark and headed in. About an hour of walking later, after sneaking past a feeding beast, I reached the edge of an underground cave. The entrance was a huge dark hole in the ground, like some ancient creature's open mouth. Scattered bones lay around the opening. Something obviously lived down there. I made a mental note of the location and was about to leave quietly when a faint glimmer caught my eye. Half hidden behind some trees, near the cave entrance, sat a box. Even from what little I could see, it looked extraordinary. White jade material with glowing patterns along the edges and some kind of liquid swirling inside. Next to it grew a strange-looking plant. I crept over as silently as I could, eyes fixed on the dark cave the whole time. The moment I got close enough, I grabbed the box and shoved it into my inventory without even checking what it was. Then I turned to run. That's when the strange plant moved. The plant was wrapped in vines with a single flower blooming on top. The moment I grabbed the box and turned, those vines unraveled like little snakes and shot toward me. I took one look and bolted, cursing as I ran. I got a good 10 meters out, but the vines were faster. I dodged between trees, trying to use the terrain, but tripped on a branch and crashed into the grass. The vines raced across the ground straight at me. I was about to use my speed talisman when they suddenly jerked to a stop half a meter from my face, like a rope pulled tight at its limit. After a moment, they slowly retracted back toward the plant. I scrambled away, got up, and flipped the thing off. I swore I'd come back and burn it someday. I hid behind a boulder to catch my breath and finally checked what I'd risked my life for. It was called a White Star crystal box. Good quality, containing 1 to several random items. I pressed the crystal on top, and it burst open with white light. 2 glowing orbs came out, 1 white and 1 green. Only 2, which was disappointing. The first was a blueprint for a stone cooking pot. Basic quality, nothing exciting. The second was a copper short blade. Good quality, heavy but usable for combat. Not worth the near-death experience, but at least I finally had an actual weapon. I gave it a few swings. The weight felt solid in my hand. I kept moving carefully for another 4 hours until I reached the forest's edge around noon. A wide grassland opened up before me, covered in knee-high green grass. About a dozen buffalo-like creatures grazed in the distance, and smaller beasts hopped around in the grass. For a second, the peaceful scene made me forget where I was. Then I caught a whiff of blood on the wind. I backed into the tree line to hide. The grass ahead started shaking violently, and the buffalo herd bolted. A massive lizard-like creature exploded out of the ground, 4 or 5 meters long, pitch-black scales gleaming in the sunlight, a blade-like horn on its head, a jaw like a crocodile lined with spikes. It launched into the air and bit the slowest buffalo clean in half with a single snap, then burrowed back underground with its kill in under 10 minutes. I'd watched plenty of nature documentaries, but nothing like that. I turned around and left immediately. These beasts could burrow underground. The grassland was off limits. Half an hour later, I was on another side of the forest where animal tracks were scarce, which worried me more than comforted me. Fewer small creatures probably meant something big owned this territory. But going around would mean not making it home before dark, so I pressed on, gripping my new copper blade tight and staying low. Then a flash of red caught the corner of my eye. A small tree nearby had bright red fruit growing on it. After the vine plant incident, I wasn't about to walk up and touch anything. I crouched at a distance, waited, threw a rock at it. Nothing happened. I approached sideways so I could spin and run if it attacked. Once I got close enough, I used the identify function. Red heart fruit, excellent quality. It could heal wounds, stop bleeding, and speed up recovery. In a world with no hospitals, this was priceless. I nearly drooled. The tree only had about a dozen fruits on it, so I grabbed every single one with both hands and kept moving. Another half hour of walking brought me to an area choked with thorny vines covering both the ground and the trees. The soil had turned a strange grayish-black color. Everything about it felt wrong. I muttered to myself that 9 out of 10 things here looked bad and turned around to find another way. After a long detour, I finally made it back to my shelter. Seeing the outline of my cave filled me with relief. The trip had been dangerous, but worthwhile. I now had a weapon and healing items. Staying safe inside all day wasn't an option either. With those nighttime horrors getting bolder, I needed to keep getting stronger. But as I got closer to the door, something made me stop. There were tracks on the ground, not mine. They looked like wolf prints, and from the number and pattern, it was clearly more than one animal. They hadn't just passed by, they'd been circling my shelter for a while. The door was still locked, thankfully, but the thought of coming home one day to a pack of beasts waiting for me was unsettling. What I didn't realize was that most survivors had built their shelters at their spawn points, which the system had placed in relatively safe areas. I'd run off during the boar chase and ended up building my home right in a high-danger zone packed with beasts. With only an hour until dark, there was nothing I could do today. I dragged 2 large rocks inside and braced them against the door like Huang Jiping had suggested. I fed the dying fire with fresh wood, blew on the coals until it caught, then set up my new stone cooking pot over the flames. I sliced some python meat into small pieces with my copper blade and pan-fried them. Even without oil, the fat inside the meat sizzled out on its own. It was a plain meal, but it was hot food. I ate while scrolling the chat. People were panicking. Hundreds more had died on day 2, still within the protection period. Some were cursing the world for bringing them here. Some were crying about wanting to go home. I read it all with a flat expression. Complaining wouldn't change anything. Whatever force could teleport 5 billion people clearly didn't care about our feelings. We were probably just ants in some entertainment show for whoever ran this place. I was about to close the chat and check the market when a message from Huang Jiping caught my attention. He'd gone exploring and wanted to share what he'd learned. People immediately paid attention. After his stone against the door trick, he'd earned some respect. His advice was simple. First, exploration was necessary. Sitting in your shelter would keep you alive for now, but once the starter rations ran out, you'd starve before any beast could kill you. Going out was risky, but always led to something useful. Second, strange environments sometimes had rare fruits with powerful effects. Finding them could greatly improve survival chances. Third, when facing danger, stay calm. Panic would get you killed faster than anything else. Then he revealed his real reason for the speech. He'd found a water source. Clean, sweet-tasting water. He was selling it. 5 units of wood for 500 milliliters. He called himself an honest merchant with fair prices. I couldn't help but smirk at Huang Jiping's sales pitch at the end. The chat went crazy roasting him for ruining his wise mentor image, but everyone still rushed to buy his water anyway. 5 units of wood for half a liter was fair enough. I closed the chat. I still had 2 dew fruits and 2 bottles of spring water, so I wasn't desperate yet, but finding my own water source was definitely on the list. I checked the market. More people were selling water now, and even some meat had appeared. I wasn't the only supplier anymore, but nobody was selling special materials. I took stock of what I had: 138 units of beast meat, 135 wood, 95 stone, 16 red heart fruits, and 11 copper forging stones, plus my leftover starter supplies. Since food didn't expire in the inventory, time seemed to freeze inside it. There was no rush to sell. I spent the rest of the night watching the market for special materials. Nothing showed up. The chat was grim as usual, people sharing horror stories or writing farewell messages. The death count from nighttime was actually lower than daytime. The shelter monuments kept most people alive, but the numbers still ticked down. Around midnight, I lay on my plank and hide bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow was day 3. The basic protection period would end. What would happen then? I woke up feeling much less sore. After a quick breakfast of 1 dew fruit and some water, I grabbed the stone hoe and shovel I'd crafted the night before and got to work outside my door. My plan was simple. Dig 2 pit traps right where the wolf tracks had been thickest. The sandy soil was soft enough to dig through without too much trouble, but it still took over 3 hours of nonstop work. 2 pits, half a meter wide and a meter deep each. I jammed sharpened wooden stakes into the bottoms, just tree branches I'd whittled the night before. Then I laid wooden planks across the top. Each one cracked nearly through at the center so they'd snap under weight, and covered everything with a layer of sand. I stared at the finished traps in silence. I had no idea if those crude wooden spikes could actually hurt whatever came prowling around. I had no idea if the camouflage would fool anything. I only knew that doing nothing meant dying for certain. After draining my last bottle of spring water, I headed out to explore a new direction. I didn't plan to go far today, just check the nearby area. I pushed through tall grass, poking ahead with a stick to avoid snakes, then entered a stretch of forest where the trees were noticeably bigger and darker than what I'd seen before. I found a pile of scattered rocks and collected 35 units of usable stone. The deeper I went, the larger the trees grew, like walking into some prehistoric jungle. Everything was dead silent, not even birds. Then a massive roar shattered the quiet. Small creatures scattered through the underbrush all around me. It sounded like a tiger or a lion, and the message was clear: stay away. I started backing up slowly. The roar came from a distance, but I wasn't about to test my luck. Just as I turned to leave, a flash of reflected light hit my eyes from above. I squinted and looked up to find where it came from. Up in the branches about 5 meters high, a crystal box was wedged between the treetops, different color and shape from yesterday's. I shielded my eyes from the sun and stared at it. Either it fell from the sky and got stuck, or something carried it up there. The thought of another giant python made my spine go cold. I circled the tree several times. No dangerous creatures in sight. But the trunk was too smooth to climb. The lowest branches were about 3 meters up. After several failed attempts, I came up with a plan. I chopped down a smaller tree with plenty of branches and dragged it over, leaning it against the big one. The smaller tree's branches caught on the larger tree's limbs and held, though it wobbled badly. I climbed it anyway. I reached the crystal box, but couldn't quite grab it. I pulled out my axe and tried to knock it loose. It was stuck tight. After multiple swings, I finally gave it everything I had. The box fell, but the force threw me off balance. I slipped and went down face first, bouncing off a couple of branches on the way. The smaller tree's foliage broke some of my fall before it snapped, and I slammed into the ground hard. I scrambled up and checked myself. My motorcycle jacket had saved me again, just a few rips. My face had 2 bruises, though. I picked up the box, muttered, "Can't stop me," and got out of there before anything came to investigate the noise. At a safe spot, I identified it. A jade crystal box, excellent quality, 1 tier above yesterday's white one. I cracked it open and got 4 items. Some basic dried meat. A mud swamp bomb that could create a swamp on impact, trapping any advanced level creature for 5 minutes. A copper axe for faster wood chopping. And the real prize, a survey stone disc, excellent quality, usable 3 times. Each use revealed all crystal boxes within a 1-kilometer radius. The swamp bomb alone was worth the bruises. If those wolf-like beasts came back to my door, I had an answer now, as long as they weren't above advanced level. I used the survey disc immediately. First skin showed nothing nearby. I walked another kilometer, nearly bumped into some pangolin creature, circled around it, and scanned again. This time a green dot appeared about 300 meters away. I found a good quality white star crystal box hidden in the grass. I moved to a new area, scanned one last time, and found a jade crystal box sitting right on the ground. The disc crumbled after its 3rd use, but 3 boxes from 1 tool was a great deal. I opened both near my shelter. From the 5 items total, the basic stuff included some supplies and a pair of beast-hide shoes with hard soles and soft fur lining, comfortable and protective. The better items were 5 white light gems that glowed steadily in the dark, solving my cave's lighting problem, and a clear sage tree seed, excellent quality. Plant it, and it would grow into a tree whose leaves could neutralize most elite-level poisons. I stared at that seed with fire in my eyes. In a world this dangerous, an antidote tree would be priceless. If I grew it successfully, everyone would want its leaves. I could see a business opportunity forming. The only disappointment was still no second type of special material for my spirit guardian. But the haul was more than enough. With 3 hours until dark, I rushed back toward my shelter. But when I got close enough to see the area in front of my door, my eyes went wide. About 200 meters from my shelter, I crouched behind thick bushes and saw them. 4 wolf-like beasts prowling in front of my door. They had deep gray fur stiff as steel needles and thick, powerful tails. 3 were ordinary-sized, but the 4th was much bigger, about 1.5 meters long, sitting upright in front of my door with front legs that looked almost like arms. I identified them, gray leap wolves. The big one was advanced level, the other 3 ordinary. Pack hunters that could take down powerful prey in small groups. One of the ordinary wolves had stepped into my trap. The sharpened sticks hadn't hurt it, but its leg was stuck in the pit for now. The other 2 were scratching at my door, while the leader stared at it like it was deciding how to get in. I couldn't fight 4 wolves head-on, but time was running out. If they were still here at nightfall, I'd be stuck outside with them and whatever came out in the dark. I tried climbing a tree to think, but the moment I started, the advanced wolf heard me. It growled, and all 3 free wolves charged my way. I scrambled up as fast as I could. They circled below, snarling and jumping. The big one could leap impressively high, but still couldn't reach me. Then it actually tried to claw its way up the trunk. My heart nearly stopped, but it couldn't manage it. I needed a plan, and I needed it now. I started throwing stones down at them. Not to hurt them, just to annoy them and herd them closer together. After dozens of stones, they'd figured out it was harmless and barely flinched, just watching me with cold predator eyes. The advanced wolf even looked amused, like it was watching prey run out of options. But they were standing exactly where I wanted them. I pulled out the mud swamp bomb and hurled it down. The big wolf thought it was another rock and casually dodged, but when it hit the ground, it exploded into a pool of thick black mud that swallowed their legs. All 3 wolves were trapped instantly. The leader thrashed and snarled, but couldn't pull free. I stood up on the branch, looked down at them with cold eyes, gripped the copper axe in one hand and the copper blade in the other, and jumped. I didn't know if it would work. I didn't know if the swamp would trap me too. I only knew this was my one chance. I landed on top of an ordinary wolf, crushing it into the mud as a cushion. At the same time, I brought the axe down with everything I had onto the advanced wolf's skull. The force of falling from several meters drove the blade deep into its head. Blood sprayed everywhere, soaking me red. My legs were numb with pain from the impact, but I could move. The swamp didn't hold me. The axe was stuck in the wolf's skull and wouldn't come out, so I grabbed its head with my left hand, found my target, and drove the copper blade straight into its eye socket. The big wolf went limp instantly. Its fierce eyes went dull, and its massive body collapsed into the black mud. The other 2 ordinary wolves were helpless. One was meters away and stuck. The other was the one I'd crushed into the swamp. They stared at me, still snarling, but deep behind the ferocity, I could see something new in their eyes: fear. I yanked the axe out of the advanced wolf's skull and finished off the one I'd used as a landing pad with a single blow. Then I walked over to the 3rd trapped wolf. It bared its teeth at me. I smiled right back, eyes full of killing intent, and hacked its head apart. The swamp faded shortly after. The 4th wolf, the one that had been stuck in my pit trap, finally freed itself and came running at me. My legs were screaming with pain, and I wasn't sure I could take another fight. So I cut off the leader's head, walked out of the trees, and threw it at the charging wolf's feet. It stopped, sniffed the head, touched it with a paw. When it realized what it was looking at, fear crept into its eyes. I shouted at it, "Your boss is dead. Leave now or end up the same way." Then I dragged the other 2 wolf bodies out of the forest and chopped their heads off right in front of it. We stared each other down for several minutes. Finally, fear won. It backed away, turned, and disappeared toward the north. The moment it left, all the tension drained from my body at once. I collected the wolf remains: 1 beast heart, 1 spine, 2 tusks, 1 hide, and 200 units of meat, all from the advanced wolf. The ordinary wolves only gave meat, nothing else. Good to know. Only advanced level and above dropped special materials. Back inside with the door locked tight, I finally peeled off my blood-soaked motorcycle jacket and checked myself. Dark bruises covered the insides of my thighs from the jump. My arm had a cut I hadn't even noticed. Blood had been running down to my palm. Multiple bruises on my shins too. I ate a red heart fruit. Warmth spread from my stomach through my whole body and gathered at my arm wound. It itched slightly, Then the bleeding stopped and a scab formed within minutes. The effect was incredible. I was starving after all that exertion. I cooked and ate nearly a full unit of beast meat plus a ration pack before I felt full. Then I placed the white light gems around the cave, 2 by the door, the rest in corners. They gave off a soft glow like dim light bulbs, about 3 meters of coverage each. The cave actually felt warm and almost cozy for the first time. It didn't feel real. I checked the chat one last time. Tomorrow was day 4. The protection period would end and the disaster announcement was coming. Everyone was anxious. Some people were begging for food, having already run out of their starter supplies. One woman offered to be anyone's girlfriend for a meal. A guy offered to be anyone's boyfriend or girlfriend for food. The chat devolved into insults. Most of the people doing nothing but complaining and begging would end up dead sooner or later. I closed the channel. There was barely any useful information in there anyway. After tonight's battle, one thing was crystal clear to me. Strength was everything in this world. I'd made my decision about what to do next. I had over 200 units of good, quality meat and 120 units of basic meat. My plan was simple. Sell most of it fast and trade for enough wood and stone to upgrade my shelter multiple times. I kept 50 units of good meat for myself and listed everything else at prices lower than anyone on the market. 30 wood or 15 stone per good meat, 15 wood or 10 stone per basic meat. I also put out the word that I was buying special materials. I posted in the chat again. The reactions were predictable. Some people were amazed, some jealous, some begging me to teach them how to fight beasts. A few other meat sellers got angry that I was undercutting their prices. I ignored all of it. The trade notifications started rolling in nonstop. Every ping meant more resources in my inventory. Through private messages, I found some useful materials too. Besides the copper forging stones I already had, someone was selling a material called yellow pine wood, hard and sturdy, perfect for the spirit guardian. I bought all 5 pieces they had. Another person had something even better, refined iron stone, excellent quality. But they demanded a 1-for-1 trade with my good meat. I told them off and blocked them. No patience for greed. After a full night of trading, I ended up with 5,000 units of wood and over 1,300 units of stone. I also traded some wood to Huang Jipping for spring water. I now had 40+ copper forging stones and 8 pieces of yellow pine wood. I excitedly opened the Spirit Awakening book and started loading materials. But when I inserted the copper forging stones, it capped at 10. The yellow pine wood went in at 8, and the Create button showed 8 out of 10. I needed 10 special material units minimum, but only had 8 of the second type. I contacted the person who sold me the yellow pine wood. They were out, 2 pieces short. I closed the book in frustration. So close. But I wasn't walking away empty-handed tonight. I had more than enough resources to upgrade my shelter, multiple times. Level 2 to 3 needed 300 wood, 150 stone, and 10 optional special materials. I threw in everything including the special materials this time. White light, sacred atmosphere, upgrade complete. I barely glanced around before checking what level 4 required. 500 wood, 300 stone, 20 special materials. I had it all. I upgraded again immediately. 3 upgrades in 3 days. Most survivors hadn't even eaten their fill yet. If anyone in the region found out, their jaws would hit the floor. Level 3 had been about 40 square meters. I was curious how big level 4 would be. When the white light faded, I looked around at my completely transformed shelter. The cave had grown from 20 square meters to 70. The walls and ceiling were now smooth, solid stone. It looked almost like a proper house. The wooden support pillars had been replaced by thick round stone columns. A wooden floor covered the ground, still a bit rough, but a huge improvement over bare dirt. 2 new rooms had appeared. One by the door turned out to be a small bathroom, about 5 square meters with something like a squat toilet. No running water, so I'd have to flush it manually, but at least I wouldn't need to use a water bottle in the middle of the night anymore. The other room was about 10 square meters, empty except for my makeshift plank and hide bed. The old fire pit was now a proper stone stove built on a stone base to protect the wooden floor. It had a slot at the bottom for feeding in wood and 2 cooking holes on top. The extra warmth drove out the cave's chill, but the best part was the door. The old plank door was gone, replaced by a massive thick slab of wood reinforced with copper fittings. The stone doorframe was built right into the cave wall. Two heavy wooden bars sat on copper roller mechanisms. Push them forward, and they'd slide into the door's locking brackets, sealing everything tight. The door was now 2.5 meters tall and 1.5 meters wide. The daily copper forging stone output had increased to 10. This finally felt like a real shelter. I checked the upgrade requirements for level 5, 1,000 wood, 500 stone, and 50 special materials. No longer optional. I didn't have enough special materials, but level 4 was more than sufficient for now. That thick door alone let me sleep in peace. I bought a wooden bed frame from the market, laid beast hide over it, and actually had a real bed for the first time. I used some spring water to wash up. 3 days without bathing was unbearable. Changed into my light clothes, and collapsed into bed. I'd barely closed my eyes when the birthplace's cold voice rang out. The 3-day protection period was over. Unknown creatures would increase, and survivors would be easier to detect. Then came the disaster announcement. Crimson Gale. In 7 days, scarlet winds from the deepest fog would sweep across the entire birthplace for 3 straight days. The sky would turn red, and the screams of survivors would be swallowed into the storm. Then a shelter ranking was announced, top 10 by shelter level, with rewards for each. I opened the chat and saw the leaderboard floating in the corner. When I read the first name, a wave of joy hit me so hard I started clapping like a maniac sitting on my bed. Number 1, Jiang Yunfei. The rest of the list was a mix of names from around the world: Ronald Jason, Yi Jun, Alexandra Yelena, and others. The chat was going absolutely wild, debating how I'd done it, whether I'd cheated, whether I'd somehow known the ranking was coming. I was too busy celebrating to care. Then a terrible thought hit me. What if it was someone else with the same name? I frantically checked my inventory. A reward box was sitting right there. I exhaled with relief. It was really me. The first place reward box burst open with blinding light. 3 items appeared, all excellent quality. The first was a scarecrow of revulsion, a one-use straw doll that could grab the attention of all creatures within 5 meters for 10 seconds. High chance against advanced beasts, lower against elite. The second was a fireblaze lantern, a special lamp that could block certain unknown creatures from sensing me, fueled by spirit crystals. The third was a star-patterned thorn seed. Plant it, and it would grow into a living defense system that followed my mental commands. Every item was powerful. The lantern especially. If it could shield me from whatever lurked in the night fog, that was worth more than anything. I tucked everything away and lay in bed planning tomorrow's route until I fell asleep without realizing it. I slept until nearly noon. Too many exhausting days had caught up with me. I rushed outside, checked the weather. Overcast, windier than before. A faint sense of unease told me the Crimson Gale was approaching. I dug 2 small holes by the door and planted both seeds, the clear sage tree and the star-patterned thorns, then watered them. I worried about whether nighttime creatures might destroy them, but there was nowhere else to put them. I'd just have to hope for the best. Then I headed into the forest from yesterday, the one with the unusually large trees. I needed to find yellow pine wood to finish my spirit guardian. I identified tree after tree, but found nothing useful. Just when I was about to give up, I came face to face with a strange-looking elk about 10 meters away. I froze and identified it. A giant hoof elk, advanced level, herbivore, generally calm and less provoked. We stared at each other for over a minute before it turned and wandered off. As it left, I noticed the tree behind where it had been standing. Among all the dark green trunks, this one was bright golden yellow. I crept closer and identified it. Yellow pine wood, exactly what I needed. I waited for the elk to move far enough away, then pulled out my axe and swung hard. A sharp clang rang out. I'd grabbed the stone axe by mistake, and it chipped on contact. This wood was incredibly hard. I switched to the copper axe and tried again. Even with proper tools, it took a full hour of chopping and resting before the tree finally came down. For units of yellow pine wood. Now I understood why this material was so rare on the market. The trees were scattered and hard to spot among regular ones, and without a metal axe you couldn't cut them at all. Stone materials were easier. You could just pick them up off the ground if they were the right size. A thought hit me as I caught my breath. If too many survivors died in the coming disaster, who would I trade with for basic resources? If everyone died and left me alone, my survival would actually get harder, not easier. But the priority right now was finishing the Spirit Guardian. I had just over 2 hours before dark, so I headed straight back to my shelter. Back in my cave, I finally took out the Spirit Awakening book. Days of searching and trading, and now I had everything. I loaded the materials into each module, Spirit Crystal as the main, Beast parts as submodules, Copper Forging Stones and Yellow Pine Wood as special materials. Every slot lit up with flowing light. I pressed Create. White glowing mist filled the cave, swirling with strange runes and symbols. 15 minutes passed. Then the mist began to clear, and a figure appeared, taller than me, about 2 meters, clad head to toe in beautiful copper-toned armor carved with runes and symbols. A full helmet with an inner face guard hid everything except a pair of eyes that glowed white and trailed mist. In his right hand he held a long blade made of copper and bone, with carved patterns and a blood groove running down the center. He looked powerful and mysterious. This was my spirit guardian. I hesitated, then said, "Hello." He instantly came to life, tapped his armor in a salute, and spoke in a deep, cold voice. "My lord." I asked if he had a name. "No," short and direct. I thought for a moment. He was created from the mountain rock bristleback's materials, and he was a spirit guardian, so I named him Yinling, Rock Spirit. He accepted without question. I peppered him with questions. Could he remove his armor? No, it was part of his body. Did he need food or sleep? No. As long as his core wasn't destroyed, he'd exist forever. Where was his core? His head. Was he male or female? Neither. He was a consciousness entity created through the spirit crystal with no real gender. Whose consciousness? He went quiet for a long time, then said he had no memories, only combat instincts. Something about that answer felt slightly off, but I couldn't figure out why, so I let it go. I told him to do as he pleased. He scanned the cave, walked to the door, drew his blade, and stood guard. I grinned. A tireless warrior who needed no food or rest, advanced level and strength. The next time wolves showed up at my door, I wouldn't have to risk my life. While cooking dinner, I browsed the chat. The tone had shifted. Less crying and complaining, more trading. People were adapting. I took stock of my situation. I still had beast materials from the gray leap wolf and the green forest python, enough for another guardian submodules. But I was missing a spirit crystal and needed more special materials. Only 10 total of copper forging stones and yellow pine wood combined, not nearly enough. Then I spotted a message from a young man named Wang Weilin. He was running a middleman service. Find any resource, material, or item for a fee. Long-term supplier of basic goods. I smiled. Someone had brought the reseller business to this world. I messaged him with my shopping list. He responded enthusiastically, calling me Boss Jiang and asking about quantities and prices. Professional enough. I offered 4 copper forging stones or 4 yellow pine wood per unit of beast meat, with a preference for trading in basic resources first, about 5 wood per 1 copper forging stone. He promised to find everything as fast as possible. Then, on a whim, I asked if he could find a spirit crystal. I didn't expect much. Mine had come from a special reward, and I doubted many people in the region had one. But to my surprise, Wang Weilin replied right away. Wang Weilin told me someone was actually selling a spirit crystal right now, but the seller wanted healing items in return. They'd been injured killing an advanced beast. I sent over the description of my red heart fruits. The seller agreed to 3 fruits for 1 crystal. I paid 2 fruits up front and asked how the seller had gotten the crystal. Turns out they'd killed an advanced beast, and it dropped 1. That surprised me. I'd killed several advanced beasts and never gotten a crystal as a drop. But the information was valuable. I paid the 3rd fruit without fuss. Wang Weilin refused any commission, saying he just wanted to build a relationship with me. Smart kid. With my ranking and reputation, being my go-to supplier was worth more than a one-time fee. That night, the eerie sounds returned outside my door. Yinling's eyes flared bright, and he started reaching for the door, ready to go fight whatever was out there. I stopped him fast. Going outside in the dark against unknown creatures was insane. I told him to stand guard and alert me if anything tried to get through the door. He obeyed, and for the first time since arriving in this world, I slept deeply and peacefully with a guardian watching over me. The next morning, I made a thin porridge from my last packet of dry rations. From now on, it would be nothing but meat. I went outside to check my plants. The star-pattern thorns had sprouted tiny buds overnight. The clear sage tree was even faster. a small stem with young leaves already showing. Whatever roamed at night hadn't bothered them, maybe because they were still too small to notice. The sky was grayer than yesterday, the atmosphere heavier. Day 5, temperature dropping. The Crimson Gale was 5 days away. I took Yinling south to explore. Having him along changed everything. His senses were sharp enough to detect beasts before we stumbled into them. No more heart-pounding surprise encounters. I searched for more yellow pine wood but found none. We came to a rocky hillside where I spotted a fox-like beast, slightly bigger than a regular wolf, tearing into some prey. Mountain Sly Swift Fox, advanced level, a cunning ambush predator with extreme speed. I needed to test whether spirit crystals really could drop from advanced beasts. I whispered to Yinling from behind the grass. Can you beat it? Kill probability, 73%. Good enough. Go ahead. Yinling moved silently through the grass, circling behind the fox. The fox heard something and froze, crouching low, staring at the rustling bushes ahead. But Yinling had already slipped around to its rear. When the fox backed up cautiously, it stepped right into his attack range. He struck, a flash of cold steel aimed at the fox's back. From where I was hiding, I could see every hair on the fox's body stand straight up as its instincts screamed danger. At the very last instant, it twisted its body at an impossible angle and dodged. Yinling's combat instincts were something else. Even as the fox dodged, he was already redirecting his blade sideways in a horizontal slash. The fox couldn't avoid this one. The blade sliced clean through one of its claws. It hit the ground whimpering, and before it could recover, Yinling closed in and took its head off with a single stroke. The whole fight lasted seconds. He carried the body to me and saluted. My lord, the beast has been killed. I stood there with my mouth hanging open. A creature I would have struggled against for my life. Gone in 2 moves. I told him he had the makings of a great emperor. He responded seriously. I have not yet reached that level. That made me pause. Not yet. So there were higher levels to reach? I collected the fox, hide, heart, 2 tusks, spine, 60 units of meat, a good, quality spirit crystal, and a resource card. So it was true, spirit crystals could drop from advanced beasts. Probably just low odds, which is why I hadn't gotten one before. I used the resource card immediately. Out came an ice marrow jade stone, a tool that produced about 500 milliliters of ice marrow liquid daily. Drinking it would strengthen my body over time, with a small chance of eventually evolving me to advanced level. The catch was it would cause brief hypothermia going down. A small price to pay. We kept exploring. The trees thinned out, and rocks became more common. I gathered stones along the way. Then we found a half-underground cave entrance, barely waist-high, with dark red stones inside that looked stained with blood. I looked at it and said very seriously, "This place has terrible energy. Yinling, we're leaving." I was turning to go when the birthplace's voice stopped me cold. I'd triggered a special event called Hunt. A creature called a blood-fang night lizard lived in this cave, hoarding a treasure. Kill it, and the treasure was mine. I turned back around and cleared my throat. Then again, the most dangerous places always hold the greatest rewards. Right, Yinling? Yes. I gripped my copper blade, and we went in. Yinling took the lead. Sunlight faded within the first few steps, and soon it was pitch black. Yinling's glowing eyes guided us down the sloping tunnel. After about 200 meters, faint light appeared, bioluminescent moss and root-like plants clinging to the walls, casting a pale blue glow. The narrow passage opened into a wide, oval chamber, almost like an underground plaza. Blue glowing plants covered the walls, making the whole space look eerie and beautiful. I wasn't here to sightsee. Where was the lizard? Both Yinling and I scanned every corner. His sharp senses, my instincts, neither of us detected anything. Had it left? Then Yinling noticed something. Most of the blue lights came from visible plants and moss. But 3 spots glowed differently. You could see the light, but couldn't make out what was behind it, as if something was hiding in the glow itself. 3 spots. 3 potential threats. I quietly put away my short blade and pulled out the longer copper axe. I whispered to Yinling. 3 spots. Could be 3 blood-fang night lizards? Yes. Can you handle it? Yes. That was enough. I kept my speed talisman ready, just in case. Yinling crept toward one of the glowing spots, pretending to survey the area while adjusting his blade. Then he struck, hurling his long knife straight at the hidden creature. Metal clashed against something hard, followed by a rasping shriek. The hit connected but didn't kill it. All three creatures started moving at once, two of them scrambling across the ceiling toward their wounded companion. Yinling scooped up his blade and reported, confirmed advanced level. Strong defenses. Cannot guarantee a one-hit kill. I kept my voice calm. Just take one down fast. After that, we'll manage. Wealth comes to those who dare. Yinling, go. He charged without hesitation. One lizard rushed at him, while the other two came straight for me. Yinling slashed the first one back, then turned to intercept the two targeting me, blocking them just in time. Now I could finally see what we were fighting. Three lizards bigger than Komodo dragons, covered in dark scales, with blue glowing ridges on their heads and backs. Their mouths were full of blood-red fangs dripping with venom. One bite, and the poison would kill you fast. I told Yinling to find their weak point. Immediately the three attacked again, two on Yinling, one on me. In the dim cave, I could barely see the lizard coming. I relied on instinct and the blue glow. A blast of foul wind came from my right, and I threw myself into a roll, barely dodging. I swung the axe blindly at where it landed. It bounced off the scales with a loud clang, doing nothing but numbing my hands. I used my speed talisman and ran, keeping distance while it chased me furiously. Meanwhile, Yinling was dominating his fight. One lizard bit down on his armored thigh and nearly shattered its fangs on what felt like steel. The other lunged for his head, but he punched it out of the air with raw force. Then he found the weakness, the neck, where the scales were thinner. His blade bit half an inch into the first lizard's throat. It screamed and thrashed. He twisted the blade, ripping the wound wider, then pulled out and left it bleeding on the ground. The second lizard whipped its tail at him. He bent backward to dodge, then kicked it so hard in the belly it flipped over. Before it could right itself, he drove his blade up through its jaw and gutted it in one stroke. By then I was running out of speed talisman time, dodging death by inches. Just as the boost was about to wear off, Yinling appeared behind my lizard. I caught my breath, looked at the two dead lizards behind him, then at the one that had been chasing me with such enthusiasm. I couldn't help grinning. The tables have turned, you overgrown gecko. The last lizard tried to run. I shouted for Yinling to stop it. No way was I losing my reward after all that. His armor clanged as he sprinted after it, cut it off, and finished it in seconds. The birthplace announced I'd completed the special event. I collected all three bodies, 180 units of meat, piles of scales, hearts, spines, fangs, for cards, and another spirit crystal. A massive haul. The cave itself was surprisingly pleasant. No stench, just the clean scent of the glowing moss. I scraped some off the wall and identified it, but it was nothing special, just a plant that glowed in the dark. Nothing else of value down here, so we headed out. On the walk back, I thought about my situation. I'd explored north and south, and besides trees and beasts there wasn't much. No water source, barely any rare plants. My starting location was genuinely terrible. Back home I changed into my light clothes and sorted everything. I now had 10 tusks, 2 hides, 5 spines, 6 beast hearts, and 180 scales from various beasts. Nearly 300 units of meat total. 3 spirit crystals, 8 copper forging stones, 2 yellow pine wood, and 11 red heart fruits. I set up the ice marrow jade stone in a corner of the cave. When I activated it, a pedestal appeared, like a chunk of cave rock with a small hole in the center that released cold mist. Below it sat a small stone bowl to catch the liquid. It dripped incredibly slowly, but supposedly would produce 500 milliliters per day. This was my only path to personally getting stronger. Drink it long enough, and I might evolve to advanced level. I opened the 4 cards from the lizard fight. The resource cards gave me 5 mountain salt gourds, a gourd-shaped food that provided salt, essential for long-term survival, and a gray hemp blanket, so I could finally stop using beast hide as bedding. The item card produced a calm spirit talisman that boosted perception, would have been perfect in that dark cave. The material card dropped 5 yellow pine wood, which was exactly what I needed. Then I opened the special event reward. A hooded black robe called the Shadow Cloak. Good quality. Wearing it reduced my presence in dim environments, blocked advanced level creatures from sensing me, and had an active ability called Shadow that turned me invisible for 3 seconds with a 1-hour cooldown. The stealth weakened if I got too close to a creature, but still, actual invisibility. I put it on immediately. The world seemed to quiet down around me, sharpening my focus. I tested the invisibility on Yanling, confirmed how it worked, then stored it away, deeply satisfied. I cooked myself a proper meal by the stove to celebrate, scrolling the chat channel while the food sizzled. The chat was its usual mix of despair and anger. Someone had been chased 2 kilometers by a beast and was begging for healing items. Another person had a bear camping outside their shelter day and night, trapping them inside. Someone else was laughing hysterically, saying they couldn't go on. I watched it all in silence. I couldn't save anyone. I could barely keep myself alive. Even as the #1 ranked survivor, all I could do was watch. Then a message from Huang Jiping stopped me cold. I'm lost. The gray fog is here. He explained what happened. He'd found a cave with or deposits and spent 2 days mining there. Today, while digging, he heard whispering voices deep inside the cave, like someone murmuring right next to his ear. He found himself walking toward the sound in a daze, drawn in by something. Then everything went black. When he woke up, it was nearly nightfall. He was trying to get home, but the fog had rolled in and he couldn't see the path. He was hiding behind a rock in the grass, typing messages. His warning to everyone: if you ever hear strange whispers, don't stop. Run. People were panicking. Then Huang sent another message. The fog turned black. I'm done for, brothers. Live well for me. He said he'd listed everything he owned on the market at the lowest possible prices. Then, there's something in the black fog. Looks like a human figure. What is that thing? Brothers, be careful at night. The black fog has a scream. Then his icon went gray. The chat erupted with grief. People called out his name. Others wept. Huang Jiping had been one of the few genuinely good people in this world, sharing survival tips, warning others about dangers, helping strangers without asking anything in return. I checked the market. His water was listed at 1 wood per unit, the absolute minimum. His other supplies were being snapped up by everyone. Some might call him naive, a saint complex that got him killed. But sitting there staring at my overcooked stew, I thought differently. What he did, caring about others even at the end, that was the fundamental difference between humans and beasts. That was the whole point of being human. The chat went silent for a long time after he died. Nobody typed a word. Eventually, a man named Hu Qixing spoke up. He said Huang had been his friend, not from back on Earth, just someone he'd met in the last few days. They'd planned to build a survivor organization together once they had enough resources. Now Huang was gone, but Hua intended to keep the promise. He would create the organization and name it Pingsheng, Huang's given name, in his memory. Members would share intelligence, trade at fair prices, and help each other survive. I closed the chat. I didn't have high hopes for an organization like that. No laws, no enforcement, no real accountability, just promises. It would attract problems. But even as I dismissed it in my head, something in my chest wouldn't settle. Ignoring everything, pretending none of it mattered. That felt like throwing away a piece of my own humanity. I set down my food and sat still for a long time, face blank, not sure what I was feeling. I couldn't tell if Huang Jiping had changed something in me, or if I should be mocking myself for even caring. Day 6. For days until the Crimson Gale. I needed to make the most of the time left because once the disaster hit, I probably wouldn't be able to go outside for 3 days. I checked the ice marrow stone. Half a bowl had collected overnight. I poured it into a separate stone bowl and put the collection bowl back. Then I looked at my plants. The clear sage tree had grown a palm-height sprout with 2 small leaves. The star-pattern thorns were doing even better. A main vine about 15 centimeters long covered in tiny fuzzy spikes, drooping on the ground. I stuck a long branch next to it so the vine could climb upward. I headed east with Yanling, back along the path from my first day. With him clearing brush ahead and sensing beasts in advance, we moved much faster. We passed my old spawn point. It was occupied now by a massive yak. I glanced at the broken trees from my fight with the boar and the python and kept going. The next 2 days were the same. Exploring in every direction, no beast hunting, no water source found, and not a single yellow pine wood tree anywhere. I searched the market, asked Wang Weilin, nothing. Copper forging stones were easy enough, but the wood was impossible. Day 8. Windy and overcast. I stood on top of a tall tree, scanning the forest in every direction. 5 kilometers explored in every direction and not one yellow pine wood. The market had none. Wang Weilin had none. I was about to give up and go hunt beasts, hoping to get lucky with a card drop, when a green reflection in the grass below caught my eye. It was coming from a strange plant. Over 2 meters tall with a thick, curved body, branches covered in sharp thorns, and a huge flower bud on top. A jade crystal box sat on one of its broad leaves. The whole thing swayed gently in the wind like it was alive. I didn't approach. After several encounters with aggressive plants, I knew better. I identified it from a distance. Creeping bloom, advanced level. It released poisonous pollen to paralyze prey, then sliced them apart with razor-sharp leaves. I wanted that crystal box. Yanling, can you handle it? Yes, he charged. The plant reacted instantly, tilting its flower bud down toward him. The bud contracted and pulsed like it was gagging, then exploded open, blasting a cloud of thick, dark green toxic fog straight into Yanling's face. The stench hit me from 20 meters away, and I covered my nose and backed up fast. But Yanling had no flesh, no blood, no lungs. The poison did absolutely nothing to him. He burst through the cloud, stepped onto the plant's curved trunk, leaped upward, and slashed through dozens of thorny branches in a single sweep. The plant thrashed its remaining leaves at him, razor-sharp edges that would have cut a person in half. They scraped across his copper armor and left nothing but shallow scratches. He didn't even slow down. He walked straight up the bent trunk to the flower bud and cut it clean off. The entire plant wilted and collapsed instantly. I tried to collect the dead plant's body, but couldn't. Apparently, plant creatures didn't drop materials. Disappointing, but at least I had the crystal box. Inside were 2 items. The first was a bag of vegetable seeds called white sprout greens. They'd grow into edible plants that tasted sweet and slightly boosted physical strength over time. The second made my eyes go wide. A Pathfinder's lantern, excellent, quality, one-time use. Light it in the fog, and it would guide you home to your shelter. For all the people who died because they got lost after dark, this was a lifeline. But the description had a chilling note at the bottom. Do not trust everything you see. When the lantern goes out, get away immediately. I had no idea what that meant, and I didn't want to think about it too hard. Back at the shelter, I turned my attention to preparing for the disaster. The weather was getting worse every day. Beasts were either hiding or growing aggressive. By 3 in the afternoon, the sky was already dark gray and strong winds bent the trees. It looked like the end of the world. I had enough materials now to upgrade to level 5. 1,000 wood, 500 stone, and 50 copper forging stones. My daily production had accumulated to 57 over these days. I pressed the upgrade button. White light lasted about a minute this time. The cave expanded to roughly 100 square meters. A new room appeared, and my bedroom grew from 10 to 15 square meters. The new room had a wooden cabinet inside that opened into a storage interface with 50 slots, a proper warehouse. I could finally stop piling things on my table. The front door was now covered in copper grid plating, and the locking bars were as thick as my calf. A small fireplace appeared below the crystal monument, bright enough to light most of the cave. I stood with my hands on my hips, looking around proudly. If a level 5 cave shelter couldn't survive the Crimson Gale, then nobody would make it. The daily special material output had changed too. No longer copper forging stones, but refined iron stones, the next tier up at excellent quality. The next upgrade would need 2,000 wood, 1,000 stone, and 100 special materials. Something to work toward. Then came the part of my day I dreaded. The ice marrow liquid. I'd already tried it twice and nearly passed out both times. I'd imagined brief hypothermia meant feeling a little cold. Instead, the thick, freezing liquid going down my throat felt like swallowing ice itself. My whole body went into uncontrollable shivering, like being plunged into a frozen lake. No amount of blankets or fire helped. I almost blacked out each time. I stared at today's portion for a long time, fighting with myself. But the desire to get stronger won. I took a deep breath and poured it all down my throat in one gulp. The cold hit my throat and guts like swallowing a blizzard. My brain nearly shut down. I doubled over, teeth clenched, body twitching. Yanling stood beside me, not knowing what to do. After a few minutes the worst passed, and I gasped for air like a drowning man pulled ashore. Then came the good part. A slow warmth spreading through my whole body as the liquid converted into energy. A faint but real feeling of getting stronger. I checked my personal panel. My level still read, ordinary, but now had a percentage, 13%. Each dose boosted me somewhere between 3 and 5%. At this rate, it would take a while, but progress was progress. I crawled into bed and passed out. The next morning, the wind was even stronger. I decided not to explore. If the weather turned suddenly, being far from home would be dangerous. Instead, I focused on moving my 2 plants inside the cave before the crimson gale destroyed them. The star-patterned thorns had climbed a meter up the stick I'd given it. The clear sage tree was about 15 centimeters tall, with tiny branches. Both were growing too slowly for my liking. Neither was even identifiable yet. I messaged Wang Weilin and asked if he could find nutrient-rich soil. He came back with an offer: black fertile soil, excellent quality, which could accelerate plant growth. The seller wanted 5 units of basic meat per unit of soil. I countered. I only had good quality meat. After some back and forth through Wang Weilin, we settled on 2 units of good meat per unit of soil. I bought 4 units and paid Wang an extra unit of meat as commission. I built 2 simple wooden planter boxes using cut lumber, woven vine rope for binding, and wooden boards for the base. Filled them with the black fertile soil and carefully transplanted both plants inside the cave. The remaining soil I'd save for planting the vegetable seeds after the disaster passed. Meanwhile, far away on his island, Yi Jun was exploring a new landmass. His situation was unique. New islands periodically appeared and connected to his home island. Then old ones vanished. Each new island had different terrain: forests, mountains, swamps. He was accompanied by a huge dog-like beast, bigger than a Tibetan Mastiff, with fierce eyes and brown fluffy fur. It was his reward from completing a special event. The 2 of them sat on a hillside sharing dried meat in the salty ocean wind, while Yi Jun tried to figure out why these islands kept shifting. Around him, while I was hunkered down in my cave preparing for the storm, Yi Jun was having his own adventure on the other side of this world. He and his beast companion, a massive war dog he'd named Ah Huang, were exploring a new island that had connected to his home territory. The terrain shifted to a rocky mountain forest with steep paths and jagged boulders. Ah Huang suddenly froze and started sniffing the air. Yi Jun raised his machete. Then the dog barked, looking upward. What Yi Jun saw on the treetop made his blood run cold. A creature that looked almost human stood on the branches staring down at them. It resembled an oversized ape with long arms and wide hands, covered in thin gray hair over corpse-like mottled skin with visible green veins. But the worst part was its face, nearly human, with bulging white eyes and a mouth split wide open in a permanent grin, packed with irregular fangs caked in blood and bits of flesh. It held a severed animal leg and looked at them like a child who'd found a new toy. Ghostface Mandrill, advanced level. A bloodthirsty jungle predator that enjoyed torturing its prey before killing them. Yi Jun started backing away, but then felt eyes on his back. A second one hung upside down from a branch behind him, wearing the same horrifying grin. Trapped front and back with dense forest on both sides. He took his combat stance. Ah Huang, you take the front one. I've got the back. He charged like lightning. The mandrill dodged his first slash easily and kicked him hard enough to send him stumbling backward. Up close, he could see the dense spikes covering its claws. One grab, and he'd be shredded. But Yi Jun was a soldier who'd faced death countless times. He stayed calm, used trees for cover, and studied its fighting patterns. He noticed that every time he hid behind a tree, the mandrill would waste a few seconds wildly attacking the surrounding trees in frustration before searching for him again. A 3 to 4 second window. He feinted, dodged behind cover one more time. Then the instant the creature started its tantrum, he whipped around behind it with blinding speed and split its skull open with the machete. I told you to stop smiling. Day 9. The wind woke me early. When I opened the door, the world outside was gray and howling, sand, stones, and broken branches flying through the air. The disaster was 1 day away. I'd already sealed every tiny crack in my door with a mixture of straw and mud. My food supply was solid. Plenty of meat plus a common vegetable called glass heart greens I'd bought from the market. Water had been harder to stock up on. With Huang Jipping gone, other water sellers had jacked their prices up to 30 wood for half a liter. The Pingxing organization stepped in and got 2 of their members who'd found water sources to sell at reasonable prices, but they'd sold out completely. Hua Qixing had been doing good work these past days, urging people to gather wood, upgrade shelters to at least level 3, and stockpile repair materials. He handled the freeloaders and guilt trippers cleanly too, refusing private messages and making everything public in the chat. It cut out most of the manipulation. His organization had grown significantly, and even Wang Weilin was working with them now. The regional population had stabilized around 8,000. Humans adapt fast. Then, as I'd expected, Hua Qixing messaged me directly. He was polite and straightforward. He wanted to cooperate. Specifically, his organization needed meat, and he wanted me to sell at a fair price. I didn't respond right away. Why would I sell cheap when I could wait until the last day and charge a premium? He clearly knew I had a large supply from my previous market sales and from what Wang Weilin must have told him. After a long silence, he played his real card, information, as a show of good faith. One of his members had found a crystal box containing something called a domain stone. According to the description, using it transported the person into a separate area, like a dungeon in a game, where they had to complete tasks for rewards. Inside, the explorer found valuable treasures, healing potions, energy-restoring herbs, and more. He was eventually attacked by unknown creatures and had to flee with serious injuries, but still came out with a significant haul. The most interesting detail, the domain stone was only rated F-class, the lowest tier. If F-class already had that much inside, what would higher-ranked ones contain? Domain stones, dungeons with ranked difficulty. Even the lowest F-class had valuable loot inside. This was huge. I asked for more details, but Hua Qixing didn't have much beyond that. He then asked if I was worried he'd shared the intel for nothing. What if I refused to sell him meat? I wasn't that kind of person. Besides, having the Pingxing organization as an information source was worth more than squeezing a few extra units of wood out of meat sales. I agreed to sell at fair prices, and in return asked that they share high-value intelligence with me first. He accepted. With business done, I decided to cook myself a proper meal before the disaster hit. I sliced fatty beast meat into chunks, skewered them on sticks over the stove, and made a soup with glass heart greens, meat slices, water, and crushed mountain salt gourd as seasoning. 2 hours later, I had the closest thing to a real dinner I'd eaten since arriving. I even used stone bowls and chopsticks I crafted instead of eating straight from the pot. It felt like a small ceremony, a way to remember the civilization we'd lost. That night the wind howled louder than ever. The chat was full of people panicking about their shelters. Some hadn't reached level 3 yet. One person's roof had been smashed by a falling tree and they couldn't move it. Others were arguing about resources. Meanwhile, I was negotiating for something I'd been wanting, a short-range crossbow blueprint. Good quality. Maximum range of 100 meters. A ranged weapon would let me fight from behind Yanling instead of risking my life in close combat every time. The seller wanted 5 units of meat. I talked him down to 3. I built it immediately, cost 3 copper forging stones and 2 yellow pine wood. A compact bronze crossbow appeared, about 40 centimeters long, weighing roughly a kilogram. Light enough to use comfortably. Then I got Wang Weilin to find me crossbow bolt blueprints. He happened to have some on hand. What a coincidence. I bought the blueprint for 50 wood and crafted 30 bolts using 30 wood and 15 copper forging stones. Each bolt had a sharp bronze tip capable of piercing advanced-level beast hide. I spent the rest of the night practicing in the cave, using a wooden plank as a target. My aim was terrible at first, but I gradually got the hang of it. I kept shooting until the birthplace's voice echoed through the world, and I stopped, rubbing my sore arms, listening. The birthplace announced the first disaster was starting. Crimson Gale, 3 days. After it ended, a regional chat channel would open, and higher-level unknown creatures would become more common. The instant the announcement finished, the wind outside exploded in force. Through my sealed door, I could hear trees snapping, objects smashing, and a howling that sounded like screaming ghosts. My level 5 door held firm without a shutter. The chat was chaos. People's doors were being blown open, even with stones bracing them. Fire pits were going out from wind pouring through cracks. Roofs were being ripped off. One person who'd had a tree collapse on their shelter days ago reported the wind finally brought it crashing through. Then their icon went dark. Hua Qixing tried to rally everyone. Seal your gaps, conserve energy, hold out for 3 days. His organization would sell water on the final day, and I'd already arranged to sell him my spare meat in bulk, over 200 units, which he'd distribute 1 per person. Combined with fruits and vegetables his people had stockpiled, maybe 2,000 survivors could be helped. Out of 8,000. I shook my head. I could sit comfortably as the #1 ranked player and pretend none of this concerned me. But I didn't even have the courage to stand up publicly like Hua Qixing did. What right did I have to judge anyone? I drank my daily dose of ice marrow liquid and went to sleep. Day 1 of the disaster. The wind was savage. Level 1 wooden shelters were shaking apart. The temperature had dropped to near freezing. Day 2 was worse. The shelters that had been barely holding on were torn open. People burned through their repair materials faster than the wind destroyed their walls. Without fire or supplies, they froze to death in the cold. Across the world, people were dying in ways I'd never see but could imagine too clearly. Somewhere in a forest, a middle-aged woman in expensive clothes pressed her hands against a crumbling wall, whispering to a son who might be somewhere in this world, begging him to survive. She ran out of strength, and the wall collapsed on top of her. On an exposed hilltop, a young factory worker barely out of college sat in his shaking level 2 shelter, eating tree roots. He'd had terrible luck from the start. Injured his leg falling from a tree on day 1, spent days limping around gathering wood. He'd fought his way to a level 2 upgrade through sheer stubbornness. But his shelter had no trees around it for protection, and now his last repair materials were gone. A thick tree trunk smashed through his roof and fell straight toward him. In his final moment, he thought of his parents and someone named Qingqing and whispered goodbye. I didn't witness any of this, but the chat told me enough. Icons going gray, one after another. Each one a life that had struggled and lost. Day 3 of the Crimson Gale was nothing like the first 2. The wind turned red. Anywhere it touched exposed skin, it tore flesh apart. People in level 2 shelters with remaining cracks screamed as the scarlet wind slipped through and shredded their faces, hands, anything uncovered. Some went mad and started laughing, urging others to open their doors and end it together. Inside my level 5 cave, I didn't feel a thing. No crimson wind, no night creatures attacking. Completely safe. The night before, I'd sold all my spare meat to Hua Qixing, 240 units. In return, I got 870 stone, 2,700 wood, 89 copper forging stones, and 33 yellow pine wood. When I saw the yellow pine wood, my eyes narrowed. So Hua Qixing had been hoarding it the whole time, knowing I needed it. If not for this trade, I never would have gotten any. Clever man. I'd also acquired a domain stone through Wang Weilin. A strange rock the size of a baby's fist with a rune carved into it. E-class difficulty, 1 rank above the F-class one Hua had told me about. The description warned that elite-level creatures might appear inside. I'd never faced an elite before, but I wasn't too worried. With the yellow pine wood finally in hand, it was time to create my second spirit guardian. I opened the book and loaded the materials. A spirit crystal as the main module, blood fang night lizard parts, 60 scales, 1 heart, 2 fangs, 1 spine, as submodules, and 10 copper forging stones plus 10 yellow pine wood as special materials. I'd wanted to use refined iron stones instead, but the book rejected them, not available at the current stage. 15 minutes of swirling light and runes later, my second guardian materialized. Same height as Yanling, same copper-style armor, but carrying a double-edged longsword with a blade over a meter long. Glowing white eyes met mine, and he saluted. I slapped his shoulder. No need for formalities. We're brothers. I named him Shuling, blood spirit, after the night lizards he was made from. He took his place beside Yanling without a word. The 2 guardians exchanged a brief glance, then stood watch together. I noticed something I couldn't explain, a faint flicker in Yanling's eyes, like a distant memory stirring. But it passed in an instant. I checked the Spirit Awakening book. With 2 guardians created, the upgrade condition was met. I selected Advance immediately. The book flipped to its second page, which had been locked before. The first page's guardian design went dark, no more could be made from it. The book's quality had risen from good to excellent, and a new unit appeared, Spirit Shield Guardian, elite level. Bigger and bulkier than the regular guardians, specialized in defense. The upgrade requirement was 2 of these shield guardians. A repair function had also been added. If a guardian was damaged, I could now fix them through the book. That alone was incredibly valuable. I smiled at the description. Shield Guardian. Sounds like a tank with a lot of health. The new shield guardian needed different materials, 7 submodules instead of 4, and 1 special module. I tried slotting refined iron stones into the special module, but they only worked as submodules. The main module was still a spirit crystal, and the submodules probably needed elite-level beast parts plus materials of matching quality. As for the special module, I had no idea what would fit. I'd have to figure it out later. Near midnight, the disaster finally ended. The wind stopped instantly, replaced by dead silence. The birthplace announced that we'd survived the first Crimson Gale, and that a regional chat channel was now open, meaning our area was just one of many. Also, the next disaster would be announced in 3 days. I checked the population, 7,057. Nearly 1,000 dead in 3 days, mostly from level 1 shelters. My ice marrow progress had reached 30%. Each dose was giving less now, down from 4 or 5% to just 3. Building some kind of tolerance, maybe. The pain was still brutal every time, but my body was handling it better than before. The next morning the weather was calm and warm again. I moved my plants back outside for sunlight. They'd grown a bit during the disaster, but slower without sun. Then I set out south with both guardians to explore beyond the night lizard cave. We'd barely entered the forest when rustling erupted from the bushes on both sides. Yenling and Shuling immediately flanked me. My lord, possible biological activity between 2 and 4 o'clock positions. Numbers unknown, then it hit me. These beasts had been trapped in their dens for 3 days during the Crimson Gale. 3 days without food. And now they were starving. Wait, how had they even survived? The red wind destroyed everything in the open. Unless the disaster only targeted survivors, not the wildlife. That was a terrifying thought. Before I could think further, a black shape exploded from behind us at lightning speed. Shuling reacted before I could even turn around, spinning his double-edged sword in a gleaming arc to intercept. Metal clashed against something impossibly hard, and the shadow vanished back into the trees. I spun around. In the darkness between the trunks, a pair of glowing green eyes stared at us. What was that? Shuling held up his sword for me to see. There was a notch in the blade. Whatever had hit it was harder than his weapon. My lord, wolf-type creature detected. Its strength exceeds ours. My blood ran cold. Stronger than both my guardians. And it wasn't alone. I could hear movement on every side. Run. We sprinted toward home. The moment we moved, a howl pierced the forest. Answering howls erupted from both flanks. 8, maybe 10 creatures closing in fast. Of course, starving predators that had been caged for 3 days, and I'd walked right into their hunting ground. Why am I always this unlucky? We ran for the shelter, but they were faster. Several massive black wolves cut us off before we could get there. In seconds, 7 or 8 of them had us surrounded. The biggest one stood nearly as tall as me at the shoulder, its green eyes locked on me, not on my guardians. They could smell that I was the only one with real flesh and blood. I identified the leader, Black Claw Forest Wolf, elite level. Pack hunter with a skill called Ambush Kill, a 30-second burst of 20% increased attack and movement speed. My guardians couldn't beat it. We were dead if we fought. Then I remembered the domain stone in my pocket. I pulled it out and whispered to Yenling and Shuling to get ready to run. Then I activated it. Enter E-class domain. Ashen jungle. Yes. White light wrapped around all 3 of us. The wolves realized something was wrong, and the leader howled. The pack charged. Fangs and claws closed in from every direction, but we vanished just in time. The wolves were left sniffing empty air where we'd been standing. After a few seconds of weightlessness and blindness, I could see again. The sky was dark and gray. Black flakes drifted down like burnt ash. Every tree around us was charred black, their bark twisted and dead. The ground was fine black dirt. It looked like a forest after a massive fire. The birthplace announced my task. Somewhere deep in this jungle was an ancient giant tree that had been destroyed by an unknown creature. Only its core remained. Find it, and bring it out for a reward. Simple enough in theory. In practice, this place was terrifying. The burnt trees gave off a horrible charcoal smell, and I kept feeling eyes watching us from the darkness. Every time I turned to look, nothing was there. But something was definitely hiding inside those blackened trunks. I lit the fire-blaze lantern, which cast a 5-meter circle of white light. We pushed deeper. After half an hour I stopped to eat and rest. Yinling spotted a green glow about 30 meters ahead, a cluster of small green fruits scattered on the ground, bright and alive against the dead landscape. Prayer fruits, good, quality, capable of healing serious wounds when enough were consumed. I had Yinling collect them first in case it was a trap. Nothing happened. I pocketed several dozen, and we kept moving. Another half hour brought us to a more devastated area. Fallen trees everywhere, everything scorched black, not a trace of life. I still had no idea where the giant tree was. The feeling of being watched grew stronger. Strange sounds echoed through the silence. Everything about this place screamed, "This is a dead zone, turn back." Then I spotted something that pushed the fear aside. A pile of rocks ahead, and mixed among them were dozens of stones with an iron-like sheen. I identified them, refined iron stones, the excellent, quality material my shelter now produced daily. Dozens of them, just sitting here. I started collecting immediately, too excited to notice that behind me, Yinling was slowly backing toward me, as if something was approaching that even he couldn't see. Yinling was backing toward me slowly, eyes locked forward. My lord, something is wrong. I didn't stop collecting, but shifted my gaze to where he was looking. Nothing but blackness. Then I heard it, movement between the trees. A shadow shifting position. We huddled together and started retreating. Then I felt eyes from behind. I turned and nearly jumped out of my skin. A half-human-sized black figure was peeking at us from behind a charred tree, showing just half its head. Its body was pitch black, its eyes almost entirely dark with barely any white. The only clear feature was a fat red tongue hanging crookedly from its mouth. The moment it realized I'd spotted it, the head ducked back behind the tree. "Show yourself," I shouted. Shuling charged instantly, his double-edged sword cleaving the burnt tree in half. The creature stumbled into the open, a black-furred thing that walked on two legs, but looked more like a rat than anything human. Matted fur, drooling red tongue, tiny sharp claws. It screamed and lunged at Shuling. I identified it. Ashen rat, advanced level. A domain creature, not a normal beast, but something twisted by an unknown attack into what it was now. Craved fresh flesh. Shuling killed it easily, running it through with his sword. But in its final breath, it let out a piercing shriek. Instantly, answering shrieks erupted from every direction around us. We were surrounded again. The dead rat dropped a black crystal. A crystal core. I pocketed it. To leave this domain, we needed to get back to our entry point. But the shrieks came from all sides, including behind us. The only direction without sounds was deeper into the jungle. Trap or not, staying meant death. I ordered both guardians forward, and we charged. Black shapes began emerging from the trees on both sides. Several lunged at me, but Yinling and Shuling intercepted them. Then 3 more blocked our path ahead. I pulled out my crossbow without slowing down, loaded a bolt, aimed, and fired. It hit one square in the face. Didn't kill it, but the bolt sank into flesh. The ice marrow liquid had been working. My body felt noticeably faster and more controlled than days ago. The wounded rat charged me in a rage. The other 2 went for my guardians. I kept sprinting. When the rat closed in, its disgusting red tongue lashed out at me like a whip. I could see the barbed hooks on it. I rolled under the strike and whispered, "Shadow, 3 seconds of invisibility." The rat lost me and hesitated. It could still vaguely sense my presence, but the detection was weak. I struck immediately, short blade aimed at its neck. It twisted away with unnatural flexibility and dodged. But my second weapon was already swinging. The copper axe caught it in the neck before it could react. The blade hit bone and stopped partway through. One chance. I torqued my whole body, hips, shoulders, arms, and wrenched the axe the rest of the way. The head came off and hit the ground. My first solo kill of a domain creature. It nearly cost me a pulled muscle in my back, but it was dead. Without the shadow cloak's invisibility and the strength from the ice marrow liquid, I never could have cut through that rat's hide. Yinling and Shuling finished there too, just as fast. They were dominant against anything at the same level. But there were too many. The shrieking never stopped. We ran deeper into the jungle with dozens of ashen rats chasing behind us, more appearing from the sides. Every few seconds one would lunge, and my guardians would knock it back. They were all targeting me, the only one with real blood. I was burning through stamina fast. If I didn't find a solution soon, exhaustion would kill me before the rats did. Then something unexpected happened. A rat leaped at me from midair, and one of the charred dead trees suddenly moved. Its trunk twisted and a branch swung out, swatting the rat away like a fly. The other rats went berserk, swarming the tree, tearing into it with their claws. The tree fought back with its branches, but was too fragile. Chunks of charcoal broke off with every swing. Still, it bought us time. I didn't understand why it hadn't attacked me when I'd walked past it earlier, but I wasn't going to question a miracle. We sprinted several hundred meters before I dared stop. The deeper we went, the less scorched everything looked. The trees were still damaged, but not as black, the soil shifting from wet black to dry gray. Yenling detected something ahead, a light source, different from any plant or treasure glow. When I put away the lantern to see better, I felt it, a sacred, overwhelming presence that made me want to kneel. Before me stood the ancient giant tree from my mission. It was impossibly tall, its trunk scorched black and hollow, bark cracked and crumbling. About 2 meters up, a large hole gaped open in the trunk, and inside it floated a sphere of pure white light, radiating waves of holy energy. I tried to identify it. Nothing, not even the system could tell me what it was. I reached for it, and heard the rats behind us. They caught up. I gripped my weapons and turned to face them. Yenling and Shuling stood in front of me, motionless, eyes steady. At least 50 rats were closing in. I knew the odds. 9 out of 10 I was going to die here. Then the light source erupted. A pulse of white energy expanded outward in a ring. Every tree it touched dissolved. The black soil melted into gray sand. Rats caught in the wave burst into smoking black puddles. The ones further back screamed and scrambled away, hiding behind trees, but not leaving. The light had created a safe zone around us. I stood there stunned. That light was like holy fire against these creatures. Instant death for anything too close. Then I heard a voice. Broken, stuttering, coming from the giant tree itself. The words weren't in any language I knew, but somehow my mind translated them automatically. Go. Leave. Get away. The rats heard it too. They stopped hiding and stepped into the open, every single one of them glaring at the light source with pure hatred twisting their faces. Whatever those words meant, it enraged them beyond reason. I stood frozen, staring at the glowing sphere inside the dead tree, trying to understand what was speaking to me. The broken voice was telling me to leave. But I realized, this light source was the core from the mission, the thing I needed to bring out. I stopped hesitating and reached into the hollow tree. The light came into my hands easily. No heat, no weight, like holding nothing at all. But the moment I took it, the ashen rats went absolutely berserk. Their eyes burned with hatred. They wanted this thing, or they wanted to destroy it. I couldn't tell which. I raised the light above my head and started walking back. The protective circle moved with me. Wherever it passed, rats scrambled away, black bark melted off trees, and dark soil turned to clean gray sand. Some trees beneath the charred surface were actually still alive. They trembled and swayed when the light freed them, as if grateful. But seconds later the rats swarmed those trees and tore them apart. I felt something from the light. An emotion, not mine. Something like grief mixed with resolve. The walk back took nearly an hour. My arms went completely numb from holding the light overhead, but I couldn't put it down with rats following our every step. When we finally reached the entry point, I could barely feel my hands. I managed to pull out the domain stone and activate it. Exit. Yes, white light wrapped us. The last thing I saw was dozens of black eyes watching from the tree line. I opened my eyes back in the real world and immediately panicked. The black claw wolves might still be here. I scanned everywhere. Empty. They'd left. I let out a long breath. The birthplace announced my reward, the giant tree's blessing. All plants inside my shelter would grow at double speed, and I received the giant tree's spirit core, an excellent, quality item containing the life essence of an ancient giant oak. It could accelerate plant growth and grant part of the ancient tree's abilities. I rushed home and went straight to the star-patterned thorns, which had already grown to about 2 meters, climbing the cliff face like a vine. I buried the spirit core at its roots. Green sparks of light rose from the soil and flowed into the plant. With each pulse, the main stem stretched taller. New branches burst from the ground. The plain dark green surface began sprouting silver-white spots connected by glowing lines, star patterns, true to its name. The plant crossed into advanced level. Then I felt it, a faint consciousness touching my mind. Like a newborn reaching out, confused but aware. The star pattern thorns had bonded with me mentally. I could communicate with it through thought. The evolution continued for over 3 hours. By the end, the main trunk had thickened into something like a tree stump, curled protectively around a glowing silver-white core. Dozens of finger-thick branches covered in sharp thorns had spread across half the cliff face like a web of spider silk. I identified it, star pattern thorns, advanced level. It could form a defensive zone around my shelter and follow my mental commands. Its passive skill, ancient oak body, gave it hardened defenses that creatures of the same level couldn't easily break through. A living security system for my home. I started communicating with it through our mental link, guiding it to strengthen the defenses around my shelter entrance. I had Yinling chop 4 thick logs about 2 meters tall and 10 centimeters across, while Shuling dug 4 holes in the corners of a 3 by 3 meter square in front of my door. They planted the logs upright, and then I mentally guided the star pattern thorns to send its vines along each post, weaving between them to form a fence enclosing the area. The thorns could only extend about 10 meters total, so 3 by 3 was the limit. The fence stood about 1 meter 20, not very tall, but the vines were thick, tightly woven, and covered in sharp spikes. With the ancient oak body passive, no ordinary advanced creature could break through. A living wall of thorns guarding my front door. There was no gate, but I could mentally tell the thorns to open a passage when I needed to leave. Inside the fenced area, I spread black fertile soil in a corner and planted the white sprout greens. With the giant trees blessing doubling plant growth inside my shelter, they should sprout fast. That night, I cooked myself a good meal to recover from the day's ordeals. Yinling and Shuling stood there staring at me while I ate. I asked if they wanted some. They said they didn't need food. Then why were they watching me like that? After dark, something happened outside that I didn't see. The nightly gray fog turned black. A creature appeared outside the thorn fence, short, less than 1.5 meters tall, draped in long black hair like a cloak. It was confused by the new barrier, and reached out to touch the vines with a hand that looked almost human. 5 fingers, 2 shorter than the rest, tipped with sharp claws, the back covered in black fur. The thorns pricked it. It shrieked and slashed at the fence with its claws, tearing the surface but unable to cause real damage. Then the star pattern thorns fought back. Vines lashed out like whips, cracking against the creature again and again. It screamed, a piercing, horrible sound that I heard clearly through my door. I jumped so hard I spilled my soup. I ran to the door and pressed my ear against it. All I could hear was snapping sounds and shrill screaming. Outside, the creature was outmatched. The vine whips left deep wounds every time they connected. It retreated out of range. It could hear me inside and desperately wanted to get at my flesh, but the thorns wouldn't let it near the door. The thorns couldn't extend far enough to chase it down either, so both sides reached a standoff. Eventually, the creature gave up and left, casting one last long look at my door. Inside, I was dying of curiosity. The sounds had stopped, and I couldn't tell what happened. Did the thorns lose? I looked at Yinling and Shuling standing ready, and wondered whether I should crack the door open just enough to peek outside. Just as I was about to crack the door open, a notification from Wang Weilin distracted me. I waited, listening. No more sounds outside. Whatever had been there was gone. The star pattern thorns must have handled it. I went back to the fireplace and opened the message. Wang said plant growth boosters were nearly impossible to buy. Everyone hoarded them for their own crops. I told him to just keep an eye out. Then he dropped something that made me sit up straight. He'd found a solid earth vein stone. Excellent quality, a special energy-type material from deep inside or veins. Exactly the kind of thing that might work as the special module for my Spirit Awakening book's New Shield Guardian. The seller wanted resources of equal quality in return. I didn't have any excellent items to spare, but I did have about 400 milliliters of leftover ice marrow liquid. I offered 300 milliliters for 2 stones. After some back and forth, the seller complained about how hard the stone was to find. We settled on 300 milliliters for 1 stone. That was all he had. The moment I got it, I opened the Spirit Awakening book and placed it in the special module slot. The border lit up with flowing light. It worked. So the special module needed energy-containing materials. Now I just needed elite-level beast parts for the submodules. That meant hunting something I'd never fought before, an elite creature. I didn't know how many materials one would drop. If it was still 4 types like advanced beasts, I'd need to kill 2. I drank the remaining ice marrow liquid. My progress was at 30% now, and went to bed planning tomorrow's route. I'd explored east, south, and west already. The north was the area with the blackened soil and dead trees that had spooked me before. With 2 guardians now, I finally had enough protection to investigate it properly. That night, I slept more peacefully than any night since arriving. The thorns kept watch outside, their silver star patterns glowing faintly in the fog. Inside the fence, the clear sage tree and the white sprout greens were growing fast under the giant tree's blessing. The next morning, I headed north with both guardians. After half an hour, we reached the black soil zone. It looked even worse up close. Dark gray vines crawling across the ground, withered pale, trees everywhere. Something powerful had corrupted this entire area. We moved carefully, stepping around the vines. Yinling scanned ahead. Shuling watched the sides and above. About 15 minutes in, a flash of light caught my eye. A glint of light among the dead trees and dark soil. A crystal box? I raised my crossbow and crept closer. But it wasn't a box. It was a small green plant about 15 centimeters tall with a single fruit glowing white on top. Awakening blood fruit. Excellent quality. Eating it would boost my attack speed and movement speed by 30% for half an hour, plus rapid healing. Incredible. I reached for it. That's when everything went wrong. Shuling spun around and slashed to the left. Metal crashed against something with tremendous force, driving him back several steps. A black shape materialized from the ground where it had been hiding among the vines, completely invisible to both my guardians until the moment it struck. A crocodile-like creature with jet-black scales, a long vicious jaw, and powerful claws gripping the earth. Its vertical slit pupils locked onto us. Burrowing black crocodile. Elite level. It could dig through soil to ambush prey, and had a skill that boosted its attack speed, movement speed, and damage by 30% when bursting from underground. Its scales gave it extreme defense. Elite. My first one. I assessed the situation fast. 2 advanced guardians against 1 elite. We had a chance. The crocodile could burrow, but I could counter that by climbing a tree. I spotted a good one nearby with tangled branches, perfect for climbing and shooting from above. Take it down. Yinling and Shuling charged without hesitation. I sprinted to the tree and scrambled up to about 3 meters. From there I watched the fight unfold. The crocodile's tail smashed Yinling backward. Its claws clashed with Shuling's sword, sparks flying. Yinling recovered and slashed at its flank. His blade skidded across the scales, throwing sparks, but barely scratching the surface. Every hit the crocodile landed dented my guardian's copper armor. Every hit they landed bounced off its scales. I kept firing bolts at its softer spots. Joints, underbelly, but my crossbow was only good quality. The damage was minimal. At this rate, my guardians would break apart before they cracked the crocodile's defense. I messaged Wang Weilin mid-fight. I need something to help in combat. Right now? Do you have anything? Somewhere far away, Wang Weilin was sorting through piles of goods in his level 3 shelter. When he saw my message, his merchant instincts kicked in. This was a chance to build real loyalty, not just do business. He pulled out a square blue gemstone, wincing at the cost, then sent it to me as a free gift through the friend transfer system. He'd figured it out immediately. If someone like me was asking for emergency combat help, I had to be facing an elite. The notification chimed in my ear while I loaded another bolt. The gift was a frost jade chain. Excellent, quality, one-time use. It could generate chains to bind an enemy and pierce them with spiked links. Worked on anything up to elite level. 10 seconds duration. Wang Weilin's note said, "Stay alive, boss." That's what matters. I knew what this cost him. But I couldn't think about that now. On the ground, Yinling and Shuling were getting torn apart. Yinling had claw marks across his arm and thigh, plus a hole punched through his left shoulder by the crocodile's tail. He fought recklessly, always trading blows head-on. Shuling was more evasive, but his sword had multiple chips in the blade, and one leg had a deep dent with bite marks where the croc had caught him. White mist seeped from their damaged areas. I'd fired over 20 bolts. None penetrated the scales. The crocodile was barely scratched while my guardians were falling apart. Then the crocodile turned its eyes on me. It whipped its tail to knock both guardians back, then started digging. Its massive claws tore through dirt in seconds, and it vanished underground, leaving a small mound. The mound started racing toward my tree like something swimming through earth. I stood up on the branch, gripping the blue gemstone. I wasn't scared, I was counting. 10 meters. 5, 3, 1. It exploded from the ground directly beneath me, jaws wide, moving like a black missile. I stood frozen, but not from fear. Yinling slammed into it at the last possible second, knocking it sideways with his full body weight. The impact rattled its insides even through the scales, but the croc raked its claws across Yinling's shoulder, leaving a horrific gash. The boosted attack from its burrow skill was devastating. Shuling was already moving. He stepped on Yinling's shoulder, launched himself off a tree trunk, and came down on the croc like an arrow. It had just landed and hadn't found its footing. This was the weakness Shuling had been studying. The croc couldn't reposition quickly with only one pair of legs. His spinning sword strike cracked multiple scales open. Black blood sprayed. The croc screamed and stumbled back. I was already on the ground running toward it. The moment it regained its footing, I threw the blue gemstone. It shattered against the croc's body, releasing a cloud of icy mist. The croc barely flinched. Then chains shot out of the mist at blinding speed, wrapping its claws, head, and tail. 2 more chains tipped with spiked cones punched straight through its body and pinned it to the earth. It collapsed, unable to move, impaled and bound. The chains couldn't kill it outright, but they didn't need to. I crossed my arms and grinned. You've got 10 seconds to live. Yinling and Shuling charged together. 10 seconds. That's all we needed. Yinling drove his blade straight through the croc's eyelid, punching through the thick protective layer and into the brain behind it. The beast convulsed violently against the chains. Shuling shoved his sword into the wound left by one of the chain spikes, forcing half the blade deep into its body. Both guardians twisted their weapons inside the creature. Shuling's sword snapped. The croc's body was harder than the blade could handle, especially after all the damage the weapon had already taken. But Yinling's knife was still buried in the croc's skull, grinding through brain matter. The beast's struggles weakened rapidly. When the chains faded after 10 seconds, the crocodile was already at death's door. It twitched on the ground for a while, then went still. Yinling confirmed the kill in his usual flat tone. Looking at the massive corpse covered in wounds, I understood something clearly. Without the frost jade chain, my 2 guardians couldn't have beaten this thing. Elite creatures were on a completely different level. Their attack and defense dwarfed anything advanced. Only beings like Yinling and Shuling, who felt no pain, could even trade blows with one. I collected the body. 200 scales, 4 fangs, 1 spine, 1 heart, 8 claws, 5 material types instead of 4, plus 130 units of meat, an excellent quality spirit crystal, and a building card. The crystal was the critical drop. Without it, I couldn't create the Shield Guardian. I didn't want to risk another elite fight just for materials. I also went back for the awakening blood fruit. Warm to the touch, shaped like a peach, smelling fresh and clean. A 30% boost to speed and attack for half an hour. Invaluable for emergencies. I tried to dig up the plant to transplant at home, but it had already withered and died after I picked the fruit. I checked my guardians. Shuling's sword was broken. Yinling's blade was chipped and cracked everywhere, barely holding together. Neither could survive another serious fight. I gave Shuling my copper short blade and axe. They'd serve him better than me right now. We pushed on for about 2 more kilometers through the black zone. 3 advanced beasts crossed our path, but none attacked aggressively. Then I found something that stopped me cold. A pit in the ground, 4 or 5 meters across, exhaling cold mist. Looking down into it, I felt something staring back, something sleeping or watching from below. A deep, primal fear gripped me. Both guardians moved in front of me without being told. I forced myself to stay calm and backed away slowly. Whatever lived in that pit was at least as strong as the crocodile we'd just barely killed, and my guardians were in no shape for another fight. Thankfully, nothing emerged. I retreated about 100 meters before the crushing pressure faded. I marked this place as a no-go zone, worse than the grassland with the burrowing lizard. Then I called the retreat. We'd covered about 3 kilometers into the black zone today, and it was nearly dark. On the way back, I started thinking about transportation. Too much time was wasted just walking. Maybe I could tame a beast to ride. With both guardians, Capturing an advanced creature alive should be possible. When I stepped through the thorn fence, a pleasant surprise was waiting. The clear sage tree had matured during the day, now taller than half my height, with lush green leaves dotted with tiny glowing spots. Good quality, with powerful detoxifying properties. It could still grow to excellent quality over time. I carefully picked about a third of the leaves, around 30, filling the air with a sharp herbal scent. I'd let the rest keep growing and see how long new leaves took to regrow. Yinling reminded me it was dark. The fog was already seeping through the thorn fence, creeping toward my door. I slammed it shut. That fog made me furious every time. If only I could clear it from around my shelter permanently. Inside, I opened the Spirit Awakening book's new repair function. It showed a diagnostic panel for each guardian with a body outline highlighting damage in yellow for light injuries and red for severe ones. Yinling was at 47% damage across 11 injury sites. Repair cost, 7 copper forging stones and 3 beast material units. I fed in the materials, leftover python fangs and spine, plus the copper forging stones. White light streamed from the book into Yinling's body, wrapping each damaged area. Half an hour later, he looked brand new. His blade had even gotten slightly longer and thicker from the fresh materials, a small upgrade. I repaired Shuling the same way. His broken sword reformed completely. Both guardians stood before me in pristine condition, armor gleaming, weapons sharp. Looking at them, I started wondering if I should craft shields for them. With shields, they'd take less damage and last longer in fights. Something to figure out later. Then I remembered the shield guardian was coming soon. It would be the dedicated tank. Shields for Yinling and Shuling would be wasted effort. I opened the building card from the crocodile. Blue light filled the cave like a fantasy scene. Inside the glow was an item called a storm lightstone pillar, excellent quality. It could be placed within 50 meters of my shelter and had multiple properties, though the details wouldn't show until I installed it. I'd set it up tomorrow. I did a full inventory count. About 5,850 wood, 1,370 stone, 40 liters of water stored in stone jars, plus various meats, vegetables, and materials. The crystal cores from the ashen rats turned out to work as fuel for the fireblaze lantern. One core gave roughly a day of light. Good to know. Then I cooked dinner. Crocodile meat with mountain salt gourd seasoning. My first taste of elite-level beast meat. It was absurdly chewy. Each piece took 5 or 6 minutes of intense jaw work before I could swallow it. My mouth was sore after the first few bites. But after swallowing, a wave of heat spread through my body from my stomach, warming me from the inside out. I took off my shirt because I was sweating. I'd made a full kilogram thinking it was a normal portion. Halfway through I was stuffed and overheating. My body clearly wasn't strong enough to handle this much elite-grade nutrition. The heat kept building. It felt like a fire burning in my core. Then my nose started bleeding. I wiped it and stared at the blood on my fingers. This meat was so potent it was literally too much for my body to process. Any more, and I'd probably pass out. I tilted my head back to stop the bleeding and fumbled open my chat interface with one hand. I messaged Wang Weilin. Hey, have you eaten yet? Wang Weilin was lying on his simple bed after a long day of sorting goods when my message came through. He replied cheerfully that he hadn't eaten yet. I sent him a stone pot of cooked crocodile meat as thanks for the frost jade chain. Then I added, by the way, it's elite-level meat. Don't eat too much. It's pretty intense. I could only imagine his reaction. He was smart enough to understand what that meant. I'd killed an elite creature. That kind of information would cement his loyalty better than any payment. Meanwhile, I was in my bathroom with torn cloth stuffed up my nose, head tilted back, bleeding for over an hour before it finally stopped. The meat had literally been too powerful for my body. But when I checked my personal panel, I found something interesting. My progress had jumped from 32% to 32.7. Just a few bites of elite meat had pushed my advancement forward. If I ate all 130 units, I'd probably break through to advanced level. The problem was the process, bleeding, overheating, and jaw exhaustion just from chewing. It would take forever to consume it all. Better to sell most of it. A quarter of one unit could probably feed a normal person for a full meal and still boost their physical fitness. This stuff was incredibly valuable. I messaged Wang Weilin to come talk after he finished eating, then took a bath and lay on my bed browsing the chat channels. The regional channel had just opened up, and it was flooded with people searching for family members. Both channels now had message limits, 20 per day for the area channel, 10 for the regional one, to cut down on spam and preserve important information. I planned to sell some elite meat through Wang Weilin to Hu Qixing's organization. It felt right to route it through Wang first. Without that frost jade chain he'd given me for free, I never would have killed the crocodile in the first place. Wang Weilin messaged me back about the meat. He'd eaten 2 pieces and was already bleeding from the nose, overheating, and full. I explained what the percentage on his personal panel meant. It tracked progress toward evolving to advanced level. He was at 0.2% from just 2 bites. The implication hit him hard. Ordinary humans could get stronger by eating powerful beast meat. Then I got to the point. I told him straight. The frost jade chain wasn't something I'd forget. I wanted to know what he expected in return. He played it humble, saying he'd sent it because the situation was urgent and he believed in my strength. No compensation needed. He just wanted to help however he could. I knew what he really meant. He was pledging loyalty. He wanted to be on my team. I'd been thinking the same thing. He was smart, resourceful, and reliable. So I gave him a job. I had 100 units of elite crocodile meat to sell. I wanted him to negotiate with Hu Qixing's organization, pitch the meat's value, the taste, the body-strengthening effects, all of it. I needed special materials, tools, and resources in return, not basic wood and stone. His commission would be 5 units of elite meat, worth roughly 6 to 8% physical improvement if consumed entirely. Wang Weilin could barely contain himself. He started planning his sales pitch immediately. He asked how much meat I had, and I told him 100 units. That confirmed what he'd already guessed. I'd taken down an elite creature. He had good reason to take this seriously. He'd once known another strong survivor who'd tamed a high-level beast and killed 2 more. That man ran into an elite creature during exploration. His tamed beast died saving him, and the elite tracked him home by scent, smashed through his level 3 shelter, and ate him alive. 3 hours from encounter to death. Wang Weilin had received the man's dying messages in real time. That experience was why he'd acquired the frost jade chain in the first place, and why he understood exactly how significant it was that I'd actually killed an elite and lived. He promised to handle the sale properly, but warned me that Hu Qixing's organization probably couldn't afford all 100 units. He suggested putting some on the open market too. I agreed. I drank my nightly ice marrow liquid. Progress hit 34.7% and crashed into bed exhausted. The next morning, I installed the storm lightstone pillar next to the star pattern thorns. When I activated it, a 5-meter-tall stone column rose from the ground, covered in glowing runes with a translucent crystal sphere on top. It had 4 special properties, but only one was unlocked so far: Radiant Storm. It continuously dispersed fog and black mist within a 10-meter radius and protected friendly beings from negative emotional effects. This was exactly what I needed. No more fog creeping up to my door at night. No more dark creatures lurking right outside. My shelter had just become dramatically safer. The other 3 properties were locked with no explanation of how to unlock them. Frustrating, but that first ability alone was worth everything. The white sprout greens were growing fast under the combined effects of black fertile soil and the giant tree's blessing. Maybe 2 or 3 days until harvest. The clear sage tree was already producing leaves I could pick. By mid-morning, I headed south with both guardians. The southern forest was my least explored direction, and it was risky. The black claw wolves might still be there. But I couldn't let fear keep me inside. I had the awakening blood fruit for emergencies, and I could try luring threats back toward the star pattern thorns if things got bad. We passed the night lizard cave from before and pushed deeper. An owl-like beast watched us from a treetop. Advanced level, nearly elite according to Yanling, but it showed no interest in attacking during daylight. We gave it a wide berth and continued southeast. Nothing of value appeared for a long time. Then my enhanced senses picked up something in the air, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Blood. A heavy, thick smell of blood. The smell came from the left, deeper in the forest. I sent Yinling to investigate. He returned 15 minutes later with a grim report: a large number of corpses. I followed him through dense undergrowth with no path. What I found made my stomach turn. The black claw wolf pack, the same wolves that had nearly killed me days ago, had been slaughtered. Every single one. 16 or 17 wolves torn to pieces, their body parts scattered across the blood-soaked ground. Limbs ripped off, flesh shredded, blood splattered on trees. The biggest shock was the leader's head hanging from a branch, jaw broken at an unnatural angle, one eye socket empty, skin peeled back with deep claw marks. This wasn't a fight. This was a massacre. Something had toyed with them. An entire pack led by an elite-level wolf, wiped out like nothing. And according to Yinling's assessment, they died just yesterday. Whatever did this was still nearby, only 4 or 5 kilometers from my shelter. I got out of there fast. South was now off limits too. East had the burrowing lizard. North had the terrifying pit. My only option was southwest, following the mountain where my cave was built, looking for a way up. It took hours of hacking through overgrown brush, but we finally found a slope. As we climbed, I heard something. Shuling identified it. Water. My heart jumped. After all these days, finally. Over the hilltop, a small valley opened up before me like a painting. A crystal-clear lake sat in the center, maybe 50 or 60 meters across, surrounded by green vegetation. Small harmless animals scattered as we approached. Fruit trees dotted the edges, red fruits like lychees and green ones like apples. Fish swam in the shallow water. I identified the lake, just an ordinary body of water. The fruits were common quality, sweetheart fruits and mountain leaf fruits. Nothing magical, but exactly what I needed. Real food variety, real nutrition, and a water source right behind my own mountain. I climbed the trees and picked nearly 100 fruits in half an hour, tasting both kinds. The green ones were tart and juicy, the red ones crisp and sweet inside. Perfect. I was about to head home when Shuling spotted something unusual nearby. Shuling led me to a hidden cave at the valley's edge, screened by trees and bushes. Scattered around the entrance were fist-sized stones with a familiar iron sheen, refined iron stones. Inside the cave walls, hundreds more were embedded in the rock, glowing faintly. My guardians had already scouted the interior. 100 meters deep, no threats, and they'd even found a jade crystal box at the back. I was practically shaking with excitement. Water source, fruit trees, and now an ironstone mine with a free crystal box? I grabbed my pickaxe and was about to start mining when Yinling stopped me. My lord, it's getting dark. I checked the time, 5:09 p.m. My blood went cold. I was 5 kilometers from home. Even sprinting, that was over an hour through rough terrain. I cursed myself. I'd gotten so caught up in the discoveries that I'd completely lost track of time. The same mistake that killed Huang Jiping. We ran. My enhanced body from the ice marrow let me move faster than any normal person. 20 minutes got us back to my starting point, but the shelter was still 3 kilometers away. Gray fog was already forming around us. The fog clung to my skin with a slimy feeling and made my temper flare for no reason. Irritation, anger, anxiety, all amplified. I pushed through it, following Yinling who cleared the path ahead. Visibility dropped fast. I checked the time again. Less than 10 minutes left, and I estimated 2 kilometers still to go. At this rate, the black fog would appear before I made it. I thought about Huang Jiping. He'd found a cave too. Lost track of time too. Then the fog came, and he died. I kept running, brain racing for solutions, until without realizing it, I slowed to a stop. I raised my head and looked around. Gray-white fog surrounded me in every direction. It was exactly 6 o'clock. The fog was doing something to me, magnifying my fear and negative emotions, dulling my hearing and smell. My sense of direction was gone completely. And the worst part, Yinling and Shuling had vanished. Both of them. I was completely alone in the fog. I took a deep breath, but the air tasted foul, a sickly smell that made everything worse. I pulled out my short blade and the fireblaze lantern, but the lantern's light couldn't penetrate the fog at all. Completely useless. No light. No guardians. No direction. Just thick gray fog pressing in from every side, amplifying my fear and anger. Most people would have lost their minds. I forced myself to stay calm. Yinling and Shuling would never abandon me. This was the fog's doing. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Something was coming. I put away the lantern and raised my crossbow, finger trembling on the trigger. The steps grew closer, then stopped. Whatever it was stood just on the other side of the fog, close enough to touch. Seconds of dead silence. One more step. A dark silhouette emerged from the mist. I fired. The bolt clanged off metal. A shape I recognized stepped through, Shuling. I nearly collapsed with relief, my legs going weak as the tension drained out of me. He knelt and apologized. A wall of thick fog had appeared suddenly between us while he was guarding my back, and by the time he stopped, I was gone. He'd been searching blindly until he sensed the faint glow of my lantern. So the lantern did work, not to light the way, but as a beacon for advanced level senses. That meant Yinling might find it too, but it might also attract whatever lived in this fog. I put my hand on Shuoling's shoulder so we wouldn't get separated again, and we moved forward together. 20 minutes in the fog now, and still no black mist. That seemed wrong. Everyone else reported the black fog appearing almost immediately. Then we heard it. Violent sounds from ahead, into the left, clashing metal and raspy screaming. A fight. We crept toward the noise. The fog grew darker with every step, shifting from gray to black. Then I saw it. Patches of pure black mist, and within them, flashes of white light. A pair of glowing white eyes. Yinling. He'd been fighting something in the black fog this entire time. That's why it hadn't reached me. He'd been holding it back alone. I raised the lantern high and spoke to Shuoling with absolute certainty. Let's go. Yinling is our partner. We're not leaving him to fight alone. I stepped into the black fog. Instantly, everything disappeared. Sight, hearing, smell, all gone. My head spun violently. Nausea hit me in waves, and I felt my body weakening with every second. But I could still see the faint glow of Yinling's eyes ahead, fighting something in the darkness. I made it a few more steps before my legs gave out. I dropped to one knee. I couldn't last in here. I handed the fireblaze lantern to Shuoling and forced out the words, "Go. Get Yinling out. I can't hold on much longer." Shuoling hesitated for the first time ever. Then he took the lantern, charged in, helped Yinling drive back whatever he was fighting, and told him we were leaving on my orders. Both of them sprinted toward me. I was fading. I bit down on my own tongue as hard as I could. Blood filled my mouth and pain exploded through my skull, but it kept me conscious just long enough. They grabbed me under each arm and hauled me out of the black zone at full speed. The moment we cleared the black fog, my breathing eased. The spinning stopped. I could hear and see again. Then I realized the black fog was chasing us, actively moving in our direction. I told them to put me down, and we all ran. I ripped the cover off the Pathfinder's lantern. A blinding white flash erupted. The black fog froze in place, halted by the light. But the flash lasted only seconds before dimming to almost nothing. The fog surged forward again, faster than before. I had no idea where home was. My sense of direction was completely gone. The Guardians estimated we were still over a kilometer away. Then I pulled out the awakening blood fruit, ready to eat it and sprint. But something ahead stopped me cold. A figure in the mist. A person. We skidded to a halt. I looked behind me. The black fog, which had been racing toward us, was now slowly retreating. Because of this figure, it approached us. Yinling and Shuoling moved in front of me, weapons ready. In the lantern's faint glow, I finally saw what it was. A hunched, thin figure about 1.5 meters tall, wrapped head to toe in white cloth strips covered in runes. The wrappings looked ancient, rotting, about to crumble. Every inch of the body was covered like a mummy. Only its eyes were visible, 2 points of dim blue light, mysterious and terrifying. It walked toward us without a word, ignoring both guardians completely. Its gaze was fixed on me. When it reached us, it slowly raised one wrapped arm and extended its hand toward me. The wrapped hand hung in the air in front of me, waiting. I stared at those glowing blue eyes for over a minute. Neither of us spoke. Then it clicked, the Pathfinder's lantern. That's what it wanted. I placed the lantern in its hand. The lantern erupted with blinding white light. The gray fog around us thinned dramatically. The black fog behind us became nearly transparent, and the creature hiding inside it was finally exposed. It was a nightmare. 8 black armored legs like a spider, 2 arms ending in triple-pointed spikes instead of hands, and a face covered in human eyeballs, dozens of them, all bloodshot, all looking the same direction. Below the eyes, a wide mouth packed with needle-thin teeth. The weakened black fog was hurting it, and it shrieked and started retreating. The robed figure spoke, strange words like an incantation. The creature fled in terror. Then the figure raised the lantern one more time. White light exploded outward. The monster screamed as its body dissolved into smoking black mist, melting away in seconds. All that remained was a pile of dark powder on the ground. A creature that had fought Yinling to a standstill, destroyed in moments. The figure turned to me. Its blue eyes swept over me briefly. Then it spoke in that alien language that somehow translated itself in my mind. Survivor in the mist. I am the guide. Follow me. It turned and walked. The fog parted before it, opening a clear path. Through the gap, I could make out familiar terrain. We were on the route south of my shelter. I followed. I tried asking who or what it was, why it lived in the fog, why it looked human. It didn't answer. Yinling and Shuling signaled silently that they couldn't guarantee winning against this being. So I kept my questions to myself and walked. After about an hour, the fog thinned and my shelter came into view. The stone pillar's glow was visible ahead, my 10-meter fog-free zone. The guide stopped, turned, and looked at me one last time. Go home. I exhaled with relief. But just as I was about to mentally signal the star-patterned thorns to open the fence, I noticed something was off. Everything looked right. The star-patterned thorns glowing silver, the clear sage tree, the stormlight pillar shining blue, the vegetables growing in the planter. My shelter, exactly as I'd left it. But something felt wrong. Then I remembered the lantern's warning. Do not trust everything you see. The fog. The stormlight pillar was supposed to clear fog within 10 meters. But there was fog everywhere inside the fence. This wasn't my shelter. It was a fake. I spun around. The guide's lantern was nearly dead, and its body was twitching and jerking. Its eyes had turned crimson red. The moment it realized I'd seen through the illusion, the entire shelter image twisted and dissolved into black mist. If I'd walked inside, I would have been dead. The guide, or whatever it really was, shrieked something inhuman and charged at us. It closed 10 meters in a blink. Yinling swung his blade at its head. The creature blocked with its forearm, bare arm against steel, and Yinling's blade chipped on impact. Then it punched him in the chest, so hard his armor caved in, and he skidded back 8 meters, gouging trenches in the ground. Shuling attacked its midsection. The thing bent backward at an impossible 80-degree angle with its feet glued to the ground, dodging completely, then snapped back upright and counterattacked before Shuling could recover. Every time a weapon hit its wrapped arms, the weapon broke. Its body was harder than anything we'd faced. This thing was at least elite level. We couldn't win. I pulled out my last emergency item, the scarecrow of revulsion. I threw it. The straw figure inflated instantly into a towering scarecrow with glowing red eyes and a split grin, blasting waves of phantom energy at the guide. If it didn't work on an elite-level target, I was out of options. The guide paused, looked at the scarecrow. Then its eyes went wide, and its whole body began convulsing, as if trapped in some terrible memory. It started attacking the scarecrow mindlessly, fists swinging wildly. 10 seconds. That's all I had. I swallowed the awakening blood fruit. Speed and power surged through me. I grabbed Shuling, pulled up Yinling, and we sprinted through the gap the guide had left open. I sprinted past the guide while it was distracted by the scarecrow, close enough to see its eyes flickering between crimson and blue. With the awakening blood fruit pumping through me, I covered over 100 meters in those 10 seconds, faster than any human on Earth had ever run. I didn't look back. The path the lantern had cleared through the fog was already closing, but enough remained to see where I was going. Behind me, the guide tore the scarecrow to shreds, then simply stood still. Its eyes had returned to blue. It muttered something to itself, words I would have understood if I'd been close enough to hear, then walked back into the fog and disappeared. When my shelter finally came into view, the real one this time, with the stormlight pillar's fog-free zone proving it was genuine, I nearly wept with relief. I signaled the star-patterned thorns to open the fence and stumbled inside. I peeled off my fog-soaked clothes, took a freezing cold bath, and sat by the fireplace eating fruit because I was too exhausted to cook. I forced down the ice marrow liquid before collapsing into bed. The elite crocodile meat would have to wait until tomorrow. My body couldn't handle it tonight. I passed out the instant I hit the bed, only managing to send Wang Weilin a single message. Sleeping. Talk tomorrow. I didn't wake up until 10 the next morning, still groggy. But I couldn't waste the day. I cooked a third of a unit of elite meat, the maximum my body could handle, and checked Wang Weilin's messages. He'd been worried, sending increasingly urgent messages when I went silent. I decided to tell him about last night. Not everything. but enough to reinforce how dangerous my life was and how capable I was of surviving it. The stronger he believed I was, the harder he'd work for me. I told him about getting caught in the fog, losing my direction and senses. Then I told him I'd encountered the black fog. His response was pure shock. Nobody survived the black fog. Ever. Then I told him there was more. There are monsters in the black fog. Terrifying ones. I barely survived. I said it calmly. Wang Weilin went silent for a long time. I could tell he was recalculating everything he thought he knew about me. He sent me some healing herbs as a gift, calling me Brother Fei, now instead of Boss Jiang. I sent them back. I didn't need them, and I didn't want him spending resources he couldn't afford. But his loyalty was exactly what I wanted. I asked him to negotiate with Hua Qixing for the materials I needed, especially excellent quality wood for the Shield Guardian. Then I headed out despite the wind and light rain. The first rain since arriving in this world. Rest meant falling behind, and falling behind meant dying. Today's destination was the valley with the lake. Water had been my biggest weakness, always buying, never enough to wash properly. With my own source, that problem was over. My inventory only had room for 15 stone jars at 5 liters each, so I used the friend gift system with Wang Weilin as a workaround. I knelt by the lake, filled jars one after another, and sent them to him through the transfer interface. He made more jars on his end while I kept filling. After an hour and a half of nonstop work, my arms burning even with enhanced strength, we'd stored about 100 jars. 500 liters total. I told him to keep 100 liters for himself. At market rates, that was worth 300 to 500 units of wood. His enthusiasm for working with me went up another notch. Then I headed to the Ironstone Cave. I'd brought dozens of basic stone pickaxes for Yinling and Shuling to use as mining tools. I could hear the clanging before I even reached the entrance. They were already hard at work inside. The outer walls of the cave were already stripped clean. Dozens of iron stones and broken pickaxes littered the ground. I scooped up over 60 stones, grinning the whole time. The basic stone pickaxes broke every 2 stones. The iron was just too hard. I had Wang Weilin make more batches while Yinling and Shuling kept swinging without rest. I tried mining myself, but after 2 stones and 3 broken pickaxes, the vibrations were too much for my arms. I left it to the professionals and supervised. By 4 o'clock, we had 147 iron stones, with about 100 still embedded in the walls for next time. Enough to upgrade my shelter. We hiked back through the rain, the first real rainfall since arriving. The muddy terrain slowed us down, but we made it by 5. I immediately boiled water for a hot bath, my first proper one in ages. Such a simple thing felt like the greatest luxury in the world. I traded with Wang Weilin, received the water jars, sent him 600 wood for materials and his work. 100 stone jars now line my storage room wall to wall, 500 liters total. Water freedom at last. Then Hua Qixing messaged. His organization had spent the day gathering trade goods for my elite meat. He sent me a long list: tools, resources, materials, medicines. I scrolled through it carefully. Most healing items were equal or weaker than my red heart fruits, but 2 stood out. Petal heart flower, excellent quality, fast healing with no side effects, though it couldn't regrow lost limbs. Lion heart grass was powerful too, but left you severely weakened afterward. I picked the flower. From the 20+ tools on offer, I chose 3. A blood swamp scroll that created a cursed swamp, reducing enemy perception. A jade bamboo dart coated in strong poison that caused immediate toxic effects. Both essential for fighting elite creatures. But the most important item was the last one I selected. An antidote potion blueprint. Excellent quality. It would add a potion crafting option to my creation menu. The stronger the detoxifying ingredient, the better the potion. Combined with my clear sage tree leaves, this was exactly what I needed. I also picked up Jade Carp Lake Water, 10 liters with natural detox properties, perfect as a potion base, and 15 liters of clear Serenity spring water that could accelerate plant growth. The real prize on the list was Darkwood Birch, 45 units of excellent quality wood. Exactly what the Shield Guardian needed for its submodules. The seller wanted 1 unit of elite meat per wood, which was steep. I sent Hua Qixing my counteroffer, cutting nearly everything in half. I knew from Wang Weilin what the actual seller prices were before Hua added his markup. The negotiation went back and forth, but I held firm. My budget was exactly 95 units of elite meat. The 100 I had -5 reserved for Wang Weilin. Hua Qixing pretended to be in pain over the prices, talking about how hard it was to convince his people. I knew it was an act. He knew I knew. We were both performing. In the end, he agreed, because keeping me as a repeat customer was worth more than squeezing extra meat out of one deal. I traded the 95 units and received everything: the petal, heart flower for healing, the blood swamp scroll, and jade bamboo dart for combat, the antidote blueprint, 25 liters of special water, 45 units of darkwood birch, 3 vegetable seed varieties, plus basic materials. I used the blueprint immediately. It integrated into my crafting menu. 1 dose needed a detox ingredient, 200 milliliters of water, and 1 unit of wood. With clear sage leaves as the ingredient and jade carp water as the base, I could mass-produce high-quality antidotes. Wang Weilin had played both sides perfectly, loyal to me while staying useful in the Pingxing organization. When I looked at the final deal, I couldn't help but smile and mutter to myself, life is theater, and everyone's performing, including me. The first antidote potion took 5 minutes to craft: 1 clear sage leaf, 200 milliliters of jade carp water, and 1 unit of wood. The result was excellent quality, complete immunity to elite-level poisons, and it could suppress even higher-tier toxins. Way better than the raw leaves alone. Stored in a wooden vial with a cork stopper, cool to the touch. I did the math. With the clear Serenity spring water accelerating growth, the clear sage tree would regrow its leaves in about 4 days, 100 to 120 leaves per harvest. That meant up to 120 potions every cycle. The only bottleneck was jade carp water supply and finding the right price point for selling them. I queued up all 33 remaining leaves for production. 3 hours of automatic crafting while I handled other business. Time to upgrade the shelter. Level 6 needed 2,000 wood, 1,000 stone, and 100 special materials. I had everything. The iron stones from the mine pushed me well over the requirement. I loaded the materials and pressed upgrade. White light lasted 5 minutes this time. When it faded, I was standing in what felt like a new home. The walls gleamed like freshly painted stone. The floor was smooth polished wood, seamless and clean. Total area had grown to 120 square meters. My bedroom expanded to 20 square meters, the storage room to 15. 2 new support pillars brought the total to 6, making the structure far more stable. But the door was the real showpiece. It had transformed from a single door into a double gate, 3 meters wide and 4 meters tall, nearly touching the ceiling. The surface was coated in silver-colored iron metal. The interior was solid. When I knocked, there was no hollow sound, just dense mass. Even the handles were forged iron. The 2 locking bars were wrapped in iron plating too. I ran my hand across the metal surface and whispered, even an elite creature would have a hard time breaking through this. The fireplace and cooking stove were bigger. The bathroom had expanded to 10 square meters. And sitting inside, it was something that made me grin like an idiot. A stone bathtub. An actual bathtub. No more pouring water over myself from stone jars and praying I didn't drop one on my head. I stood there stroking the edge of the tub like it was the most precious thing in the world. The shelter description now read, extremely high defense and comfortable living conditions. Daily ironstone output increased to 5. But the next upgrade had changed. It now required level 2 materials. A new conversion function had appeared. 10 units of basic wood or stone could be transformed into 1 unit of level 2 material. That made sense. The shelter couldn't just keep getting bigger forever. The focus was shifting to stronger defenses. Level 7 would need 3,000 basic wood and 1,500 stone for conversion, plus 150 special materials. I was short on stone and iron, but there was no rush before the next disaster. Now for the main event. I opened the Spirit Awakening book to page 2 and loaded everything. Main module, 1, excellent, spirit crystal. 7 submodules, 200 crocodile scales, 1 heart, 1 spine, for fangs, 8 claws, 10 iron stones, 10 darkwood birch. Special module, 1 solid earth vein stone. I press create. The familiar rune vortex swirled. 15 minutes later, a figure emerged from the white mist. He was massive, about 2 meters 20, towering over me. Silver-white armor covered in glowing holy runes with white decorative patterns. Crocodile scales reinforced his shoulders and knees. Silver chains wrapped around his forearms and waist. In his left hand, he held a huge V-shaped shield, half his height, framed in dark wood and plated with crocodile scales. In his right, a meter-long iron war hammer, crocodile spine at its core, ironstone shell on the outside. One end of the hammer was a vicious spike. The other was a flat face studded with tiny triangular points. Getting hit by either side would be devastating. He knelt. I told him to stand and never kneel again. Then I checked his stats. Spirit Shield Guardian. Elite level. Skill. Earth Vein. Activates a powerful light shield on his physical shield and massively increases knockback resistance while touching the ground. 10 minutes active, 30-minute cooldown. Enemies would have to break through the light shield first, then get past the physical shield, then crack his iron armor. Layer after layer of defense. I named him Black Shield, after the dark-framed barrier he carried. He acknowledged by tapping his hammer against his shield, a deep, resonant clang. Follow your lord's command. He walked to the door and took his place between Yenling and Shuling without being told. 3 guardians now. 2 advanced, 1 elite. For the first time since arriving in this world, I wasn't the one who needed to be afraid. I opened my chat to message Wang Weilin. There was a lot to plan. I asked Wang Weilin about taming beasts for riding. He was confused. Didn't I know about beast taming scrolls? Apparently, while I'd been busy nearly dying in fog, the whole region had discovered these scrolls from crystal boxes. They let you tame weakened creatures into permanently loyal companions. Most people who got one kept it rather than selling, for obvious reasons. A tamed beast could be the difference between life and death. No one was selling. I told Wang Weilin to put the word out that I'd pay top price if anyone changed their mind. My antidote potions had finished crafting, 34 vials. I'd save most for later, but figured I should advertise them now. I opened the regional chat for the first time in days and posted a simple message. High-quality antidotes for sale, fully neutralizes elite-level poisons. Private message me. My name appearing in the chat after a long absence caused an immediate stir. Some people were impressed. Some skeptical. One person shared how a venomous bite had nearly killed them, and they barely survived with a detox item. Then came the voices I expected. The guy named Jiang has too much good stuff. We should unite and make him share with everyone. He's number 1 on the rankings. He owes us. Exactly. Why does he get to eat meat while we suffer? He should contribute to all survivors. A few people chimed in with mock formal agreement. It was textbook moral blackmail, guilting someone into giving away their resources because they had more than others. I didn't bother responding. This was just human nature, jealousy amplified by desperation. I'd never built public goodwill the way Hua Qixing had, and I had no interest in becoming everyone's charity case. I wasn't a saint, and I'd never pretended to be one. The only reason I helped at all was because other survivors dying made my own survival harder. But I did quietly memorize every name that tried to pressure me. Just in case. I drank my nightly ice marrow liquid. My progress was approaching 40% now, about 4% daily between the liquid and the elite meat. Still too slow for my liking, but I was far ahead of virtually every other survivor. At midnight, the birthplace spoke. Second disaster announced. Sky eclipse, torrential rain. Gray clouds would descend like fog, and the land would become a graveyard filled with blood and flesh. 7 days until arrival, lasting 3 days. The shelter leaderboard would now update daily with final rewards after the disaster. And a new ranking had been revealed, the combat power leaderboard. I opened the chat and looked at the top spot. My name. Again. First place on both rankings. I clapped like a maniac for the second time in this world, completely ignoring the 3 guardians staring at me. The chat erupted. People couldn't believe someone held both number 1 positions. Some accused me of cheating. Others pointed out the new scoring system for shelters. My score was 7,400, while most people had a few hundred at best. I opened my reward box. 2 light orbs appeared. 1 blue, 1 pink. I'd never seen pink before. My eyes locked onto it immediately. The blue orb contained a Realm Exit Talisman, one-time use, excellent quality. It created a decoy while putting me into a 10-second state where I was immune to all damage. Strange concept, but clearly a life-saving emergency tool. The pink orb was something else entirely. A small jade vial called Cloud Jade Crystallization, and its quality rating was rare, the tier above excellent. First time I'd seen anything at that level. Inside were 10 small crystals filled with swirling energy liquid. The description said consuming them would boost strength significantly, but warned that anything below elite level risked a near-death state from the overwhelming power. I opened the vial and immediately felt a terrifying aura leak out, like something monstrous was sealed inside. Every instinct told me to drink one, but the warning was clear, and I'd learned to respect warnings in this world. I was barely at 40% toward advanced. Elite was far beyond me. I sealed the crystals back up. These were for later, or for Black Shield, who was already elite level. The reason I ranked first in combat wasn't my personal strength. It was my 3 guardians being counted as part of my fighting force. Somewhere out there, other survivors might have found better power-up items than my Ice Marrow liquid, but nobody else had an elite-level shield guardian and 2 advanced warriors fighting for them. I glanced at Black Shield standing guard and exhaled with relief. If I'd created him even one day later, first place would have slipped away. The second place name on both leaderboards was Yi Jun again, the same person who'd been chasing me since the first ranking. His shelter score was 7,250 to my 7,400, just 150 points apart. Uncomfortably close. Somewhere on his island, Yi Jun was staring at my name on his screen, surrounded by his tamed beasts, the massive war dog, and now a huge brown bear with tusks jutting from its jaw. He'd built his treehouse to level 6 as well. He ordered his contacts to dig up everything they could about me. I didn't care. I bought a fur pad from the market, threw it on my bed, and passed out. The next morning, I needed to plant the vegetable seeds I'd traded for, which meant getting more black fertile soil. Wang Weilin connected me directly with sellers now, no middleman delay, just contact information and I'd negotiate myself. The black soil seller, a thin man named Chun Wanghai, responded eagerly. Then he started trying to jack up the price, going on about how valuable the soil was and how he regretted selling it before. I cut him off. 2 units of good meat and 3 basic fruits per unit of soil. Take it or leave it. He agreed instantly. Then added a small request. Could I tell him what the first place reward was? How did I manage to top both rankings? I stared at his message, then at his profile picture with that supposedly shrewd face, going back and forth several times. A man in his 30s, trying to trade a bit of dirt for intelligence about my most valuable secrets. I blocked him. I wasn't desperate for his soil. And I had zero patience for people who thought they could fish for critical information with transparent flattery and a small request. After blocking that idiot, I contacted the next seller, a woman named Wenshu. She seemed calm and composed from her profile. She had something called plant growth substance, good quality. Pour it on soil and it immediately improved quality and accelerated plant growth for 5 days. Similar to black fertile soil, but manufactured from beast materials and other resources. She quoted 2 units of good meat per liter, then surprised me by suggesting a partnership instead of a simple sale. Her proposal: I provide beast materials, she provides the growth substance at half price, just covering her labor cost. I refused immediately. Hunting beasts to supply her raw materials meant risking my life. The risk-reward ratio was terrible, and I needed beast materials for my own purposes. She went quiet, then came back with a completely different offer. She would supply me plant growth substance regularly, for free. That got my attention so fast I nearly tipped my chair over backward. Her terms: every 5 days, she'd give me a batch of growth substance, and I'd give her 20 units of good, quality beast materials including bone-type items like tusks and claws. We haggled over quantity. She started at 5 bottles, I pushed for 10. After a quick back and forth, we settled on 8 bottles every 5 days for 20 units of materials. Easy deal. I still had leftover night lizard and swift fox materials, and with Black Shield on my team, hunting advanced beasts was trivial now. 1 kill every 5 days more than covered it. When Shu had her own angle. She'd tamed a black cat using a beast taming scroll, small but deadly, capable of slicing through advanced level hide. She'd been using it to hunt for beast materials herself, but the process was dangerous for both her and her pet. Having me supply materials instead meant she could scale up production safely. My 20 units would let her craft 80 bottles, keeping her business running while she focused on growing her operation. A clean deal where both sides won. I liked her style: direct, practical, no games. When Shu was happy, I was happy. I got 2 bottles of growth substance to start, traded her 5 units of beast materials, and we agreed to settle the rest within 2 days. I poured 1 bottle around the clear sage tree after harvesting all 78 leaves. The thick yellowish liquid soaked into the ground instantly, turning the soil golden. The second bottle went to the star-patterned thorns. I could feel its pleasure through our mental link as the nutrients hit. Then I planted the 3 new seed varieties I'd gotten from Huaqishing: green vine gourd, spring greens, and dragon whisker fruit. Basic level crops, nothing special, just regular food like what we had on Earth. I dug some spots, scattered the seeds, covered them, and watered. Simple farming. By 11 I was geared up and heading out with all 3 guardians. We took the mountain path past the valley, squeezed along a narrow cliff trail, and pushed into the forest beyond. This was the western approach, the area above my shelter that I'd never explored. Black Shield took point. The forest thinned into an open area with sparse trees, tall dry grass, and scattered boulders. Then I spotted something on the grass tips. Red. Blood. I crouched and examined the trail. Drops and smears led across the clearing, with a heavy bloodstain on a large rock showing a wide paw print, too big for a wolf, lion, or tiger-sized. I sent Yinling and Shuling to scout, while Black Shield stayed with me. Yinling returned first. More tracks and blood heading into the forest at 10 o'clock. Something big had been wounded here, then fled into the trees. But there were no signs of a battle in the clearing itself. Strange. Wounded or not, a beast that size was dangerous. But with Black Shield on my team, I liked my chances. We followed the blood trail into the forest. Not far in, a roar echoed through the trees. Close. Black Shield pushed toward it immediately. We crept forward until we found cover behind some rocks on a sandy hillside behind the mountain where my shelter was built. From there, I finally saw what was making the noise.